Good morning, good day, and good evening as we are live with it's a global live stream today. I'm very happy to welcome three VC friends from all over the world. Um, Good friend of mine, Brian, Embryonic Robot, great channel. He's from Toronto. So in the same time zone as myself. So I'm in Montreal. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
It's gonna be fun.
thanks for being on the show. From the UK, Mr. David Atkinson, the one and only David Atkinson. I already had a pleasure to have a great chat with Steve from All Over the Stage a couple of weeks ago. Good day for you. It's 1:45 p.m., right?
Something like that, yeah. Indeed it
Okay.
is. Yep.
So it's not tea time. It's something like between lunchtime and beer time or whatever.
It's just perfect. And when you gave me the option of taking the nighttime slot or the afternoon slot, it was quite a tough decision.
Yeah, that was the challenge of today to finding the right slot that suits everyone. And last but definitely not least, for the very first time on a live stream on my channel, I don't know if you appear on other streams from the Land Down Under, as one Ben from the 80s. Mr. Ben Rankings, welcome to the show, Ben.
G'day, thanks for having me and thanks for organising this as well.
Yeah,
It's
it's
cool
a
to be
pleasure.
here.
How are you?
I'd be lying if I was saying I'm not a little bit tired. It's 11:45 at the moment, so I'll see how long I last.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but I'm all right. Yeah, going well, thanks.
Yeah, and I just had this conversation with Brian. You are coming to Canada in 3 weeks, so it would have been much more simple if we had like maybe
Yeah, I fly out on the 1st, so
yeah.
I'll be in Vancouver for that week, but then across to Toronto and
Yeah.
it'd be great to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, we will certainly share a coffee and maybe more. And we already have some people in the chat. Good morning. Good morning, Trevor. Um, Flake Fall, pretty German. Hello, hey, from Cologne. So, guten Morgen, hello. Um, Mr. or Mrs. Fall Queens, general friends. Don't know. And
He's an Australian up in
oh,
Brisbane.
okay.
He's staying up late too.
And Mr. MGK Boston, the one and only. Good morning. Thorsten, another guy from Germany. So yeah, maybe the first one. It's a great way to introduce maybe our channel. Thank you guys. You helped me to prepare this show with questions, with topic. We discussed. We had a pre-call meeting. So we had a various topic we will be covering. This is a great one. Maybe I will give the floor to Ben. It's the first time on this show. Maybe give an opportunity to introduce, to present his channel to us. The floor is yours, Ben.
Well, that's a big intro. Well, my channel is primarily I try and present Australian music as best I can, and try and do stuff which is maybe a little bit off the radar and things that I consider to be like classic in my world. So you're not gonna hear like things like In Excess or Men at Work or any of I was going to say that crap, but that's probably I'm going a bit hard too early there. But yeah, so I like a lot of stuff, which punk rock or indie rock and things like that. So and I lost my mind last week and did all Canadian stuff in celebration of me coming to Canada next week. So yeah, what else did you want to know?
When did you start the channel, and why? What was the main motivation of sharing your passion with other people on YouTube or other platform?
I've been going just over 2 years, I think, and yeah, I I probably, like a lot of people, during because we had pretty decent lockdowns over here. I'm in Victoria, and in Australia, which our city, Melbourne, we were probably one of the most locked down cities in the world at the time.
Dan Andrews.
Yeah,
Famous Dan Andrews.
exactly. And so, like a lot of other people, I hadn't really watched a lot of YouTube or anything prior to that, and discovered the VC through that, like just from liking music and having a look at what was out there. And then thought, oh, I've got other people out there who I can talk to, so I don't my wife won't divorce me from talking about music nonstop, because she was a captive audience through that entire time. So yeah, I literally looked up how to make a VC video in YouTube, and Chris Profi's head appeared, and literally, yeah, said how to do it. So it was as simple as that, and I just, yeah, sort of fumbled my way through it, and decided I wasn't seeing too much about Australian stuff out there, and thought that might be a good niche for me. And yeah, that's pretty much how it all started. It was pretty basic. Like, I'm sure a lot of people jumped on during COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people they already added their channel. I remember back in the days I was still living in France. They were like starting to be big, very big in numbers with live streams. And how many VC members from Australia? I cannot really figure it out. Do you know? I know Fred from Big Star 1000, a French guy originally. He's been living in Australia for 20 years. Perhaps you get to know him. Yeah, how many people are video maker from your country?
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell you. Like, it's
Yeah.
I'm surprised all the time. Like, there's lots of channels I hear. It's funny, actually. I hear of Australian channels on other shows, like people from the UK and the States and Canada talk about people who I haven't heard of before. That's the thing. Like, Australia is really like a big country as far as distance and that goes. So, yeah, I discover people through the VC like anyone else. But there's not like a little community of VC people I know here, actually. So
Okay,
I know more people overseas, to be honest.
that's why you're coming to celebrate with us in Toronto, the great city.
Yeah, get around some of my people.
Yeah, and Toronto, perfect transition. For the first time on my live stream, Mr. Brian. Very good to see you. We met personally for a coffee. A couple of can you introduce your channel? The floor is yours.
Sure. Well, I've been on YouTube for about 2.5 years, and that comes after watching YouTube videos on the vinyl community for at least 10 years. In fact, I would say, close to 10 years ago, I almost created a channel, but I didn't do it because I think I'm not sure the reason I didn't do it, but I felt maybe nervous about it, or like, what do I have to offer? But so for 2.5 years, I've been on here making videos. I don't even know how many videos I've made, but I have, and again, it was a COVID thing. In fact, my first video, I actually have COVID. You can hear it in my voice, which is kind of funny. But I came here
Right
with
now.
no plan. I came here with no plan. I don't have a schedule of posting. I didn't have a theme I wanted to create. I didn't want to focus on Canadian music. I was going into it almost, despite the fact having watched videos for 10 years or more, I didn't have a plan on what I wanted to do. I didn't really know what the strategy was. So I just started making videos following whatever came up. And some of those were threads and tags and then that kind of thing. So, I post videos randomly about any topic that happens to occur to me or things I have in my collection. But I don't really have, I can't, now I'm calling myself a guy from Toronto with almost no Aussie music. Just every time I watch Ben's channel, I'm like, I don't know any of this music, but yeah, so that's sort of I don't have a goal. I'm actually surprised when anyone subscribes to my channel. I don't understand it, but I don't know. It's just I'm just seeing where it goes, and I don't have any, I'm just kind of going with it and seeing what happens. And I'm lucky enough to have enough free time that I can actually make videos. So that's really the broad outlines. I don't consider myself an expert in anything, I should say, as well. Like in terms of music, I'm not an expert in any one genre. So that's kind of unlike some other people who are very Beatle focused or very prog focused or very, again, Australian focused. I don't have a particular area where I think that I'm particularly knowledgeable.
You're very Leonard Cohen focused.
Yeah.
Although I've never made a Leonard Cohen video.
Yes.
So, there you go.
That's true. And it's from Montreal, so you should let me talking about Leonard Cohen. Yeah, no, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Since Leonard Cohen was born in Montreal, and is people are very proud of him. When you
Leonard Cohen?
A teacher. Yeah. So
just a fringe guy. You wouldn't know him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And David, you already introduced your channel, but for people who live on the rock, who woke up this morning, can you highlight about your project, your channel?
Yeah, I will do. Thanks. I started making videos for business because I was a management consultant and a business trainer for about 10, 15, actually more than 15 years. And I was doing these videos with the help of my brother, and I was just useless at talking to camera, absolutely rubbish. And what he did, I tell you what it was. It was just I wouldn't say it was an epiphany, but I saw somebody do a VC video, a lengthy video of a rundown of one of my favorite bands. And I thought, you know what I'm missing in my kind of late middle age is people who I can talk to music about. And it's become much clearer as the times goes on. The only people I really speak to music about is people in the VC. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I can talk about music. So I did a rundown of this band, which was my rundown of the worst to best Genesis videos. And it got a good reaction. And I thought, oh, well, I'll do a bit more of that. And so I've just continued doing that. But I didn't want to, my intentions, and these still remain, is not really to limit my discussions to music and collecting records and so on. It's to kind of do more of, I mean, this sounds incredibly pretentious, but it's like a little bit of a window on my world that is primarily done for me to kind of chalk the wheel. So like keep a note of what I'm doing and what I'm interested in for my children, so maybe they can look at that if I'm not around, and maybe some friends, and then the broader community. So I kind of just like mix things up quite a bit and try not to get a bit like Brian. I'm not never wanted to be pigeonholed as a particular genre specific channel. And so I talk about all sorts of music. And, contrary to what Brian's saying, I might be a bit of an expert in mainstream progressive rock and 80s stuff, but that's simply born of spending so much time watching and listening and reading back in the day. But I venture into lots of different things now, and definitely where I'm not an expert. But it's fun. That's why I do it.
Yeah. And if I can conclude, you're on my channel, the French guy who moved to Canada 2 years ago, who brought his entire collection of vinyl records. Wanted to talk about my experience. It was fun to start over there, prior COVID, be able to travel Germany, Switzerland, UK as well. And now being very close to the border with Vermont, so having access to a lot more opportunities in Montreal and Toronto as well, where I get awful opportunity to travel for work. So yeah, it's fun to meet all this community of people. My channel are in English. I recently started a channel with my buddy Stun Rock Confusions in French. So we do live stream every Sunday morning in French. It's a French channel, but it's my French Vinyl Addicts channel is my biggest project. So it's very cool since, I started to do live streams. So bring people together, finding sort of common ground. This is exactly what I like to do. And hi, Steve. We hired the statistical breakdown expert this morning.
He's the perfect guy for the job.
He's perfect.
I'm going to get Steve to make a spreadsheet for me.
Yeah, but he might put it. If you want it alphabetical, you're not going to be happy because he has first names.
That's true.
Yeah, that's an issue, isn't it?
And I'm sure he'll comment on that any second now.
So, that question, does anybody have an answer? I cannot really. It is an interesting one.
Well, I'll have
go ahead, Ben.
Crack if you like. Yeah, sort of I guess the thing that ties a lot, because I have a lot of contrary to belief, I have stuff other than Australian music in my collection. Like I like a lot of punk, indie, like I said earlier, but up above me, I've got like a collection of jazz and ska and dub music, and I like a lot of krautrock as well. But I guess what sort of ties it together is I kind of like whatever genre it is. I tend to be attracted to the stuff that's like a little bit weird, or a little bit that's sort of got a bit of edge in it and intensity to it, that kind of like, regardless of the genre. Like, for example, the jazz I like is probably more the free jazz and skronky, noisy stuff than what I like to call polite cafe jazz. That's the sort of thing. And I guess a lot of Australian music, no matter how full on it is, there's always a bit of humor in there as well. So that's probably a real rough sort of summation of what brings it all together, I suppose.
Brian?
Well, that's a tough question. When I first read that question, my answer was going to be no. There's nothing that ties it together. It said, despite the genres you may have, because it's true that I have a lot of genres, like many people, like everything from folk to rock, krautrock, punk, post-punk, new wave, even prog. So my first reaction to this question was no. But then when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about the fact that, first of all, I have what I would call completionist tendencies. So there is that element in my collection where if you were to look at a certain artist, you'll find in many cases a very good representation of their output. In many cases, complete, like Lou Reed. I had pretty much everything. So there's that element that I don't know if that ties it together, but there's that sort of theme, I guess, in my collection. There's always been I've always had this a number of artists that I would buy, whatever they put out on the day it came out, without having heard anything about it or knowing if it was reviewed positively or not. There's a whole list of artists I would buy. So there's that sort of ties into completionist, but sort of like trusted artists that I would just buy something. But I guess another way to look at this is the way my collection is interesting, because I tend to follow, I don't know if they're threads or certain rabbit holes, I guess, with relation to certain artists. So with the Velvet Underground, for example, I explored most of the side projects. So things, the Lou Reed, John Cale, Nico, even some Maureen Tucker, and all the linkages that are sort of formed with that. And same is true with King Crimson. When I became interested in King Crimson, I was getting every single release that had Robert Fripp associated with it, Adrian Belew, Bill Bruford, Tony Levin, and then they all circle around and sort of melt together. So then I have weird collaborative works, things where other people appear on the record. So just this weird ecosystem of everybody that circles around and comes back and forth through Brian Eno, then to Roxy Music, and then Brian Eno again, Eno and Cale, and Reed and Cale, and then that sort of thing, I guess, is a part of my collection. I'm not sure if that ties it together, but that's sort of something I have noticed about me as a person. When I became interested in 20th century classical music, it was all about everything that Steve Reich had been interested in and that kind of thing. So that's sort of weird way that these cross pollinations or things like that. So that's something that I've noticed about my collection. But if someone were to look at my videos, I think they might think that I had in terms of genre, I know this is kind of apart from genre, they would probably see me as sort of like an 80s kind of new wave guy. That may be true, but that's the best answer. Sorry?
I thought you were pretty bit of a goth for a while there with a lot of the
well, yeah,
house and things like
that. Sisters of Mercy, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I'm not sure that's a real answer to that question. It's a tough question, but and it does sort of I can't hard to answer without thinking of a genre, but that's the best I can do, I think, on that question.
What's your take on that one, David?
Well, I think I'm older than you guys, so I've kind of gone the journey since the early 1970s and gone through progressive rock and hard rock, then disco, soul, punk, new wave, post-punk. Americana was a big thing for me in the 1990s, and then I got into suddenly started hoovering up loads of jazz and soundtrack music, and not to mention classical music, which I've been buying since about 1973 as well. And much of this just behind me here, not directly, but along there is just a couple of thousand classical records. But I think what's happened, and so I've done all this stuff where I've been at the front, being spat on at punk gigs, pogoing away like crazy. I've been nightclub with a velvet jacket on, dancing to disco and looking at who am I going to attract the attention of at 5 to 2 in the morning. I've been through all of that, and then I think where I've got to now is kind of, I described this just the other day. It's like it's more head music now. And that what I tend to do is I tend to move less to music, but concentrate more. So I don't get off on big rock gigs very often. So I was at Springsteen just a couple of nights ago, and I'm surrounded by 40,000 people who are singing along with every word that he sings, and I'm thinking, nah, that's not me. I'm not dancing. I'll tap my foot lightly. I'm listening. I'm trying to concentrate on the band and him and what he's singing about and the performance and so on and so forth. So I kind of sit there in a much more concentrated fashion now. So the thread that brings all my musical taste together in 2024 has become music that doesn't move me physically, but stimulates me mentally.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I try to answer that question as well, and it's pretty hard to say yes, since I listen to a lot of different genre, new wave as well, electronic music a bit, mainly classic rock, prog rock, as you might know, and yeah, it's interesting. I started with a big four, maybe when I was kid: Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Beatles, and the Stones. After a while, I discovered a classic radio station in the US, in Canada, and now with the vinyl community and the record show, more obscure stuff, but always focus on that same golden era of classic rock, 1965 up until 1985, which is a bit weird because I was born in 1986. So that's music before the year I was born, but it's still very interesting. I can spend years and years to discover obscure bands, and we are talking about Europe, UK, and US, and there are a lot of different other countries. I recently traveled to France, and I discovered obscure band from my hometown I didn't know much about. So yeah, but it's a tough question. We have Dr. Robert over here. He's asking if we do this regularly. Yeah, so it's the first time. We are 4 people chatting for music from all over the world. So yeah, maybe if it works, we will be considering doing another. But that's the first stream. Okay, moving on to the next topic. Good one as well. Why prioritize vinyl over CD or streaming?
All right.
just
Brian.
to annoy people.
You want to start first, Ben?
So I was just being a dickhead. It's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
it's a good question. Recently on my channel, I've had a few comments from people who sort of argue with me about. They present these provocative comments like, "Why are you listening to vinyl? CDs are much better." And I have like 2,500 CDs. It's not like I don't have CDs. But for me, I think, and this is, I'm sure we'll have repeated themes here. The vinyl experience for me is very important, and whether or not you like the sound of vinyl over CD or CD over vinyl is kind of that's is what it is. For me, I like the experience of vinyl, and I have CDs as well, but I like the large format of the coverage of the jacket. I remember being a teenager and just sort of sitting, listening to the album intently while looking at the liner notes. And I think that's something that kind of lost its way with CDs. And now with streaming, of course, you don't really do that. So that's always been interesting to me. I find it the more tactile, ritualistic experience of putting a record on and dropping the needle is very important to me. Sorry?
It's just a question from Tony. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
10 minutes in almost. Sorry, carry on, Brian. Forgive me.
That's okay. I find them more likely to listen intently when I put a record on. If I put a CD on or streaming, it's sort of in the background. I don't really sort of focus on it, if that makes sense. So I find it a more personal, connected experience with the music than with something tangible. And that's not to say that CDs can't have that. In fact, if it was a choice between CDs and streaming, I would choose CDs every single time over streaming. I've never really appreciated streaming. And I like the fact that, even a record that is pretty beat up and scratched, you can still listen to it. So that's kind of interesting to me. I mean, streaming, of course, you can listen to it, but I don't like the idea that you have to pay continually for access to a streaming service. And once you stop, you don't have anything anymore. That seems odd to me. And there's a lot of memories associated with vinyl for me as from being a kid. I find the physical act of digging in a record bin much more satisfying than flipping through CDs. So, I mean, that's sort of the general thing. I mean, going back to sound, does vinyl sound better than CDs? I think that depends on your system, really. I mean, it could be that your system, maybe CDs sound better, or maybe people have an excellent CD transport that sounds amazing, which is totally fine. But I have always loved the vinyl aspect for various reasons. Even with the occasional pop and click, I find it really satisfying. Yeah.
Can I go?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure, because I mean, I just want to echo quite a bit of what Brian was saying there, because there's something about vinyl that demands a degree of attention and concentration, because you can't, well, you can, but it's not a good idea to fall asleep on the sofa as your record's playing, because 20 minutes later you're going to wear out your stylus. So, like my journey has been through all of the formats, making cassette compilations back in the day, streaming, mini disc, and so on and so forth. And I found that when I was streaming, it was fantastic for a while. I was just able to get access to all of my existing collection. Although I think these days I'd struggle to get to play Fat Bottom Girls by Queen, because I think that's been removed from Spotify. I found after a while of having, it was like too much of a good thing, and it became like oral wallpaper. It was just not music anymore. It was pleasant noise. And I was lucky because apart from a few trade-ins, I've never really sold my record collection at any significant, at stage to any significant extent. So I've retained most of my records since the early 1970s, and then supplemented that with lots of CDs. Well, I find after I abandoned streaming, two consequences really. One is that vinyl kind of became much more prominent in my listening habits than it was before, and I just thought the more attention I gave, the more I would get out of the music. And so that as it's kind of been like a virtuous circle, if you like. It really is. The more I give, the more I get. But the second thing, so that's great, but the downside is that when you don't stream, and I stopped buying the music magazines a few years ago, you lose touch with new music. Man, it's really hard to keep up. And when I see Ben putting up lots of like indie modern type bands, and I know that's not exclusive what you do, Ben, because I've seen some others in your stuff that go back quite a long time. when I see people who really showcase really modern music, I kind of feel really left out and thinking, oh my God, I'm missing so much. But just to come back to a point made earlier, I found that there is more undiscovered music that is in the back catalogue of all these genres that will keep me occupied for 3 lifetimes for me to get too excited about the latest indie band.
Cool.
That makes sense. Everyone's gone silent.
Just floored by that amazing
Yeah.
answer. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you want to reply to Tony Jedi of the Forest's question?
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that.
Yeah, no
How
problem.
big
Yeah.
is your collection? It looks massive in your videos. Oh God, I haven't counted it. I did watch a Vinyl Richie video yesterday, and he described each one of these sections in these Kallax setups as a cube. And he said he had like 33 cubes. And I thought, that's how to answer that question, Tony, is to talk about the number of cubes. So while you're thinking, I'll just mentally calculate. So just carry on. Ben, you do your stuff, and I'll come back with the number, give you an idea.
Yeah.
In line with that, I don't want to know, because if it would probably give me nightmares and make me lose sleep, and then I'd have to start thinking about things like space and double ups and all of that stuff. So when people ask me how many records, I just say I got a lot.
Too many is the regular answer, but not while my other half is around.
Too many, but not enough.
Yes.
Hi, Sam.
Well, getting back to the question.
Yep.
Well, I feel like I have to come out here and say I've never streamed ever. I wouldn't even know how to do it. And it's not because I have some moral stance or anything. I'm just probably a bit of a dinosaur with technology. Same, I don't stream television or anything like that. If I miss it, I miss it is the world I live in. And I'm old enough where when I was a kid, like in primary school, records, that was the format. When and cassettes were around, but my initial memories are like everyone. My parents had the Beatles Blue double album and a lot of crap, which really set me on my punk rock path. It was very easy with the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and Billy Joel and all that. But so that was just normal to me to listen to have vinyl all the time. And that was the lounge room stereo was where you would listen, and I'd listen with headphones on and that. But then the main thing for me became cassettes for a while, because when you become a teenager, you can you take that in your room and you have your cassette player there. But I always had my little collection of records in the lounge room, and then around the late 80s, early 90s was when CDs become the next thing for me after like cassettes. It was a thing you could have in your room as a teenager. It was cheap to buy a CD player, but the records kept following me everywhere. And then like older uncles and older cousins started offloading records, and I was just like, yes, thanks, because I had a cheap turntable at the time, because they were jumping on CDs and that kind of thing. But so it was not really like I was specifically after records. And then there was something that when I moved down to Melbourne from the country and discovered small record stores like Go Records and Missing Link and things like that, which were independent record stores, and they had more vinyl than I'd seen in the 90s, because nowhere else had, like the big stores you go, be all CDs. And it seemed to be that was the way you could get these like punk rock bands and indie rock bands and all that. It was a cheap way to release things, was on 7-inch and 10 inches and that sort of thing. And records were cheap as well in the 90s, brand new records as well. So that was kind of where the penny dropped. And I sort of, as I'm in that weird position now where a lot of the stuff which come out on CD in the 90s, I'm getting the reissues of the 90s stuff now. And then as my gears got better, the amazing thing is like these records that I held on to for years and years, there's like so much more in them than I realized, like as far as listening goes, which is incredible, because you know a record a certain way that you've had forever, and as you know your gear improves, you hear things and it's like they're all new again. And so it's not about, I've just grabbed whatever was available to me at the time when I was young. It wasn't a preference, but then at a certain point, records have just become the thing and it's probably got more to do with as I've got better gear. I just like the sound. I like the format of it. I like reading all of the information on the record. CDs are good, convenient. I've got, because the 90s, I've probably got about 1,000 or more CDs as well. But it's I don't know if it's nostalgic because it's just what I grew up with, but definitely as I've got older, I really, really like the sound of records. There's just something about the way it jumps out of the speakers when you get like either an old 80s record or a 70s record and it's in pretty good condition. It's just got a bit of bite. And people who say records sound warm, I don't think that's true. Like records actually are really like got a lot more detail than you realize. Even old punk rock records, which if it was recorded in way back when at decent quality and it was an analog production, it sounds fantastic. But I think sort of fell into it and fell in love with it.
There's something about when we transition to CDs, and I've got thousands of CDs as well, and what that temptation to skip a track that is not quite as good as the last one or the next one, just I think messes with your brain, messes with the listening experience. So I just like the discipline of saying, I'm
remember CD players, which you could program the songs.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to do that? Because
I was guilty of that with the CD player. You would actually like program your best songs and then not listen to the rest of it.
You just might as well just make cassettes,
Yeah.
I've got an answer for Tony.
Yeah, I guess that's that
carry on, Ben.
mentality.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying with that CD thing of programming songs, it's like kind of the same idea as like making mixtapes.
Yeah.
If you just pick out the stuff you like and you don't, take time, which is what's good about vinyl. You listen to it as a whole thing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say eloquent out of explaining this stuff.
I was just going to say, to answer Tony's question, how many records or how many cubes, I can only count the cubes. So I've just done this mental calculation, and there are 204.
Oh my God. Wow.
204.
Wow.
Who's going to do the math on that?
IKEA have made a fortune out of me.
Is Steve still available in the chat? Steve, if you can hear.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I was going to invite Steve over so he could build a spreadsheet of my collection, but I think it would do his head in, I'm afraid.
Steve,
David.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, David, do you have yours in Discogs, by the way? I'm just curious if you've done that.
Be joking. I listen to people like you, Brian, and I've heard other people. You do your shaky thing on your phone as your random thing, and I think it's not a bad idea. And so I start, and then I get about 20 minutes in, and it's like I'm opening up and say, what pressing is this? And I think, because you look at which one you're going to tick. And there's like 30 different variants. And I think, that's it. I'm done. So no, nothing's in Discogs. It's not logged, but it is room by room in alphabetical order. By surname, Steve. By surname.
My answer sorry. My answer to that question, why prioritize vinyl? yeah, the short question would be the short answer will be to have the physical format. I realize I have friends, they have maybe 20 in their 20s or 30s. When they grew up, their parents didn't have physical format any longer. And I had a chance to go back to my parents' collection, even to my grandparents' collection. So, what was the song we were listening when we were kids? And we could trace back, we could have a physical format. Kids were growing early 2000 or 2010 didn't have the chance because it was all playlist, all MP3 or something related. So it's not bad, but it's much more harder to go back to, hey, what was the genre our father was listening when we were driving in a car and so on. And of course, I grew up in the 90s with the CD. Streaming was a great way to access to all different genre. I spent nights to do some playlists to download on Spotify and Napster, for instance, or Emule or LimeWire or what. And yeah, it was fun. But it's interesting. I bought a turntable in 2019, and just a year prior COVID, and it was just a year I changed my job. I used to work in Switzerland, so driving every day like 3 hours in my car. So it was fun to have MP3, to have all these this iPad or something, and switching job and being stuck because of lockdown helped me to grow my vinyl collection, because suddenly I was at home. I had a lot of more time, less time in my car. And yeah, it's as you said, David, you can dedicate more your time to rediscovering a record, it might sound weird, but to read the lyrics or the credit on the cover, and it stuck on your mind much more, in a much more efficient way, as just listening a playlist and forgetting about it the next week. But everything has its pro and cons. I'm still driving much more time when I got to visit my clients, because Canada is very huge. So yeah, MP3 or streaming is handy, no question about that. But when I'm home, when fully concentrated, and when I want to enjoy, when I want to consume music in a perfect way, vinyl might be the best solution I have found. So
Well, just to add, I mean, I made a
yeah.
comment about fat bottom girls being removed from Spotify, and I don't quite know whether that's the truth because I'm not on Spotify right now. But it was in the news a while ago, and this morning I just watched a video from which was mentioned gaming, one of these games. I don't game and all that sort of stuff, but this was an interesting one. This guy had bought this this game about 10 years ago for £40. And the manufacturer of the game has decided it's going to offer no more technical support. And this particular game program was something that you could have the physical disc, but it would still connect via the internet to a program at the manufacturers. So he's got all these gamers have got this game, and the game has been withdrawn effectively.
Wow.
Someone spent money and it's been taken away. So that fear that when you just stream is that you don't have anything, you don't own anything. And I can pick a record here that might have been released in the 60s or the 70s. I might not listen to it for 25 years, and I'll put it on the turntable and it'll be, wow, it's like new. This is like a new experience, and it's there in my hands.
Yeah.
So apart from this idea of it becoming just like wallpaper and doesn't demand your attention or concentration, it's the fact that someone else is deciding what's in your collection. Not for me.
I might have this wrong with streaming, but also from what I gather is like a lot of stuff, like when you buy stuff, retail or whatever things, how there's that thing of like, if you like this, you might like this kind of thing, like what Amazon does and whatever.
Yeah.
And from what I understand is when people use streaming a lot, you end up like boxing yourself in, and it's all becomes one kind of music, or one, you know, when you're not really discovering anything outside of that, because it'll be like, oh, you like this band, so we'll play a bunch of other stuff that sounds like that. But I think I've heard people who stream, and when they just have it on, I don't know, random, I suppose, I don't know what it is, but it will just like, they'll pick a song or two to start with, and it'll just keep coming with stuff that's similar to that. So, you know, in my mind, I don't like the idea of like you're just boxed in and it becomes very narrow.
Yeah, but
you know, this is my technology for traveling. That's how high tech I am.
That's great. I've got 4 of those. 4 of those.
Served me well.
You know,
yeah, I do.
Funny thing is, I would say the funny thing is I have a modded Spotify app on my phone, which means it's Spotify Premium. I don't pay for it. It's just, it works as a premium, but I don't actually use it. This is the weird thing. It's there and I never think to use it. So it's a weird thing, but I do have an iPod for the car because I think that's awesome. But
I like, because you can kind of curate an iPod, which is good about it.
Yeah.
I'm the same with Amazon Music is on my phone, and it's got thousands of songs on it, but I never use it at all. And in the car now, I don't use my iPods. I just use data sticks. There's 2 slots for data sticks. And so I just run random, you know, around something, mostly random, but some other stuff, sometimes specific artists as I'm driving.
Oh, Steve, already done the math.
Oh,
How great
come on. What's it? Oh, my God.
Whoa.
I should do a screenshot of that, Steve. Yeah, let me do a screenshot. There you go. And I'll send that to my other half, and she'll kick me out.
Steve, it's Saturday morning. You are watching a live stream. You should give yourself a break, Steve. we love you, Steve.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
No, I imagine Steve's always on.
Either spreadsheet or vinyl community related content.
Yeah, you
just think he'll have even more time when he retires.
Yeah,
so
this is
we have more to look
exactly
forward
Mike. This is exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Next topic. Interesting one. And since David, you are the one who came up with the idea, the floor is yours.
Yeah, but I must tell the audience that you initially rejected it because you didn't know it was a good idea because it's controversial. Let me show you. I mean, listen, I buy loads of most of my record purchases these days are new records. I'm always on the hunt for a bargain, but they're new. And as we all know, in the last 10 years, 15, 20 years, whatever, there's been lots of great new releases that purport to be kind of audiophile, but they're not this, where is it? Original master. Come on, what do you call that?
Mo-fi.
Mo-fi. It's not Mo-fi.
Mo-fi.
So there's loads of stuff that's really good, high quality remasters, remixes on kind of virgin vinyl, and they're just absolutely fabulous. But when I occasionally trip over the videos of the Mo-fi ones, for example, the ones that are kind of, you know, not $50 for $150 and things like that, I think my copy is I'm sure it's almost as good as that. And when I actually went through my collection, thought, well, I need to pick a few random ones just to show on this live stream that would qualify, perhaps. There's obviously Blood on the Tracks, which I bought in St. John's in Newfoundland on a business trip a while ago. Kevin Gray. See, I don't even know who this guy was until fairly recently, but that's New Adventures in Hi-Fi by REM. Good album, one of the more quiet ones, but I really like that one. This one is, I'm not sure it qualifies as an audiophile, but it is, what is it? Half Speed Master of Darkness on the Edge of Town.
Oops, sorry.
And then finally, This one's MoFi as well. Have I actually opened this one? Oh yeah, I have opened it. Yeah, I have opened it, but it's stuck again. And that is Tears for Fears, The Seeds of Love, which sounds brilliant. But just to go back to what I was saying before about vinyl, there are many things that determine the quality of the listening experience. And I watch hi-fi channels and things like that, and I've always been kind of interested in hi-fi. Although I wouldn't say, I'm probably in a bit of an audiophile compared to most, but I'm not a crazy guy who will spend tens of thousands and all that sort of stuff. But what you learn is, speakers are important, the source is important, but not so much on digital. The room is crucially important. I have a different listening experience in this wood room here versus my listening room at the top of the house. So in a sunroom we have, which is mostly glass, that sounds different. And I defy anyone who to suggest to me that the MoFi version, even though I'm tempted to buy them because some of these packages look fantastic, I challenge anybody to be able to say that, it's really worth the money unless your room is kind of perfectly laid out. And very, very few of us have perfectly designed listening spaces. Probably just a handful within the vinyl community. And the people who do are in the hi-fi community, not the vinyl community, because they're talking about all the hardware and the sound and the soundproofing and sound treatments for the room. And I think very, very few of us have that luxury. So I kind of just finally, to get to the point, is to me, it's about how concentrated I am in listening, because I don't care whether it's a MoFi or it's some absolutely fantastic. If I'm washing the dishes when I'm listening to it, that's not a MoFi experience to me. So it's really about me and the room. That's kind of my excuse for not spending a fortune on expensive records.
Brian?
Sure. Well, I think MoFi or audiophile pressings certainly matter to lots of people. For me, maybe less so. First, I should say that I actually have very little experience with audiophile pressings. In fact, speaking of MoFi, this is my only MoFi pressing.
Oh, wow.
And I got it in a thrift shop for $1.99, no sales tax. So that's the only one I have. But, to be honest, I'm a little too cheap in terms of records, because I look at a price of a new, these UHQR MoFi things. I think for that price, I could buy 3, 4, whatever other records. And for me, that probably is more important, to be exposed to different music or to get something I know I'm going to listen to. I'm worrying about damaging, do I want to damage a really expensive record? So I'm a little cheap. But the other thing that I really thought about maybe more recently is the aging process. So my ears are not what they were when I was 20 years old. I do have some tinnitus. And so I think, am I actually going to objectively hear the difference between a regular pressing and a MoFi pressing? I might. It's true that I might, but I'm not so sure that I will be convinced that it's a good enough difference to make it worth my while. And I think it's really expensive to get the best sound. It's more than just the record, as David alluded to. You need the best equipment. You need an excellent turntable. You need space. You need speakers. You need all that things. I don't think I have that right now. But old records can sound amazing. Like, for example, this is one of the best sounding records I have. The original first pressing of Tracy Chapman, which was $7.99. And this sounds amazing. Even there was someone in my house a while ago who we were listening to records, and when I put this one on, they were like, why does that record sound so good? Well, it just does. It's an amazing pressing. So I think who mastered it, how the record was pressed, I think is really, really important. So I have old records which sound really, really good. And, who knows when the digital process was started in record pressing. It probably was there before many people think. But going back to the 70s and 80s, some of these records sound incredible. And so I don't know. I think MoFi can be I keep saying MoFi, audiophile, very important for some people. for me personally, a little less for all the reasons I mentioned, but I'm not going to criticize anyone for seeking out audiophile pressings. I'm actually probably a little bit jealous of, you know, a $30,000 turntable and and all these amazing pressings, like someone that, you know, Michael 45 RPM, an amazing collection. So yeah, it's probably part of me is a little jealous, but I don't think I'll ever end up in that situation for various reasons. That's my answer.
Yeah. Let me just throw something in as well. Something about when you get a more revealing system, when you spend some significant money on hi-fi, not only does it make those old records sound fantastic, it also exposes terrible mastering and mixing and records you used to love to a point that some of them you don't put on anymore. You go back to the CD maybe in the car.
Yeah. What's your take on that one, Ben?
I'll just quickly say, when you mentioned Michael 45 RPM, I've noticed like he started off with a lot of modern audiophile pressings, and I've noticed recently he's going back to the source and paying a fortune for originals now. That's where he's sort of shifted his thing now, and that's as he's got his gear. He's got incredible, like he's got a turntable which is like this with a, you know, a mono cartridge and a stereo cartridge, which just breaks my brain. This is one of my favorite audiophile records on Monophonic by the Crusaders. Yeah, on the great monophonic sound that you'll hear. Very, very audiophile record, that one. I think
Didn't they do Street Life? Is that the same Crusaders that did Street Life?
Nice. No, they're
Randy Crawford.
Like, that's them there. I think that was recorded in a garage. But having said that, I do have a few audiophile records, and like I've now got like a pretty decent system. I've got a Macintosh amplifier and a P8 turntable and a decent set of Sonos Faber speakers, and yeah, it reveals so much more, as you say. The detail in the sound, you get a lot more out of it. Even like stuff like this, it's not recorded great. It's probably not the best pressing or anything, but it really jumps out of the speakers. Like, you get more out of everything, I find. But having said that, I find some of the modern audiophile ones, they're almost too much of a clinical representation of it when you compare that. So if it's the same record and you have like it's an 80s record, for example, there's just a bit more bite in the 80s one, whereas I feel like it's a bit nice and polished around the edges on a lot of the audiophile ones. You know, again, it depends on the source. Like, I think the way a record's recorded to start with is a big way in how it's going to sound. Like, obviously you need a good pressing and whatever, but you know, you can't polish a turd if it's not recorded well in the first place. It's not going to sound good, kind of thing. But yeah, and also the whole audiophile, a lot of that record, a lot of that stuff's sort of not my taste anyway. So I'm not, you know, finding like having said that, there is one I'm really interested in, if you know those like Atlantic 75 reissues, which are coming out through Analog Productions. Yeah. And one which really I thought was interesting because it was way out of what you would expect from them is they're going to do Velvet Underground's Loaded, which is probably their best sounding record, but you wouldn't think it would be like an audiophile release. So that kind of thing interests me in regards to that. So I don't know, like I'm neither here nor there. I got a good setup. I like good sounding records, but if the music is good, that's the main thing, as wanky as that sounds. And I often wonder, people who are real audiophiles, how many gigs they go to, because they'd be really disappointed with the sound at a live show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point here.
This morning I watched a video well, there was an interview with Stephen Wilson. So you'll know Stephen Wilson, most of you,
Yeah.
if not all of you. And he was talking about Dolby Atmos, because Stephen Wilson, as well as a musician, he does a lot of remixing and remastering of classic albums. And he's very, very good on this Dolby Atmos thing. But what he said is that sometimes when you separate the music in a very clinical fashion, what happens, it doesn't, when the end result doesn't sound like the original band. So if you, and he was citing the Rolling Stones as a very good example, is that the bass, drums, and rhythm guitar kind of lay down, if you like, the backdrop for the music. And it's kind of, once you separate that and have the rhythm guitar up there somewhere and the drums out back and so on, it doesn't sound like the Stones anymore. So he says some music just lends itself to being knitted together and ultimately over time not really messed with. That you kind of just have to accept that's the way it is. You're never going to make an audiophile pressing out of, dare I say it, maybe some of the Velvet Underground albums, because some of them are really raw, aren't they? Sound really raw.
Yeah. And that's what is like their charm as well.
Yeah.
Because they sound like a band in a room, which is what, what I like.
Especially VU, in my judgment. I love the VU album.
So yeah, it's an interesting topic, audiophile. This is by far the only copy I have in my collection. This is the very first LP I bought when I moved to Canada. Wasn't really, I would say, crazy or freak about MoFi. It just happened to be a MoFi in the bin, so I bought it. I was looking for that record for a long time. We had this 5-hour live stream last Sunday with Stunny, and we were covering all the steps, how to make vinyl records, the lacquering, the stamper, and mastering, and all that stuff. And I don't have the room, I don't have the budget, so I'm not considering myself an audiophile person. As I said, original is a. It's funny, Ben. You were mentioning Atlantic 75 anniversary releases. Last year, my copy of Selling England by the Pound was very poor. So last year, I was holding in my hand that Atlantic 75, and it costed a fortune. Simply costed a fortune.
Oh, they're really expensive.
And very, very expensive. And I was traveling 2 weeks ago to Germany, and I found a pristine copy of Selling by the Pound OJ UK Press on the flea market for €10. So audiophile pressings are always reissues, and they are never or practically never the original. And if you discuss with sound engineering, they will tell you, that the master tapes will lose information from after 6 months. So they are pro and cons. Coltrane album, I will never have a chance to find an OG copy of. Of course, I will never pay $2,000 for that. If I want a record, and the only available option to me is the audiophile pressing or the UHQR for a fraction of that price, then I will pay the price. Or an obscure band.
That's
from
what's
the UK.
Cool about a lot of jazz now, isn't it? With the Blue Note classics that actually not too bad price wise, and they sound amazing.
Yeah, or that band Dark, Northampton band, 64 private pressing. The last copy sold over £50,000. And when the box set came up for £20, I bought it. I'm not stupid, or I'm not rich, or both. But as I said, pro and cons. But I tend to understand why people invest that money, and they want to have the big experience. But when, as you say, David, if you are cleaning the dishes, or if you are, let's say, not fully concentrated, it's not an audiophile experience. So yeah.
But having said that, I watch most of Mazzy's videos, and Mazzy is he's been in the music business over the years, and he gets access to a lot of new releases, which is great for him. And he seems to really look after his gear, and he presents them so well. And you see some of these releases that I don't see in HMV, which is our main record store in Birmingham. I don't see them there. It's lovely to see them, and I just, a bit like what you were saying, Brian, I get a bit jealous too. But kudos to anybody who is able to get access to those, to try them out. So I can absolutely accept that if my listening space is the same, my concentration levels are the same, that there's going to be some advantage in these audiophile pressings over an original. I accept that, but in the round, it's hard to justify spending a huge amount of money in that direction.
Yeah.
Now, can I completely contradict myself, because you brought up Bruce before, David, and just show you I got this recently, which sounds freaking amazing.
Yeah, well, the good thing about this live stream is that we have to gift something to each of the other people on the stream, so I'm looking forward to receiving that, Ben.
It's really
Have
really good.
you got the original?
I think it's.
Have you got the original?
No, I don't have an original of that. No.
Yeah, I mean the original sounds really good as well, mind you, but I'm sure that's brilliant. Yeah.
This was a very important
all I know about Bruce is that some of his, like the Born to Run and a couple of those, they weren't great sounding records at the start, like as far as the recording goes. But
I think let me just say, I mean, I'm a huge Bruce fan. Most of his catalog sounds terrible if you measure it against an audiophile standard. Some of them are downright rubbish, like Magic and Working on a Dream. Appalling. That second album that you've just held up there, Ben, is probably one of his best sounding records, because it sounds much more organic than the kind of more compressed stuff that he was doing for MP3 players in the 90s and since. So yeah, that's great.
This is
this is going to be a thumbnail for someone of me holding up an audiophile record, and all my punk rock cred will just go out the window.
Yeah. Feel free on your travels, Ben. Feel free to pop by the UK on your way back to Australia. Bring that
one in your mailbox.
This is an interesting point we have with Stanley when you said it's the better, the UHQR or the remaster is the better, but compared to what? Compared to an OG? Did you ever compare to an OG? And you remember, David, you were talking about this Asia Steely Dan version, and you had the UK press, we were discussing with other people from North America the US is way different, the dynamic, the sound. So maybe that's the reason. I won't blame the UK sound engineering, but there are a lot of different elements.
When someone says, because I did this video and I talked about Asia was a soporific album, it just kind of put me to sleep basically, and I like Steely Dan, and someone said, well, what pressing are you listening to?
Yeah.
And I went back to the UK. I've got a couple of copies, and I thought, nah, it's just not great. But I did buy the new version, not the expensive one, the $30 version or £30 version, which is kind of I'm not even sure it's a remaster or just a repress or whatever, but it's something that they've done something to the catalog. And I listened to it, and it is genuinely better. So my original UK is rubbish in comparison. But to come back to my example of washing the dishes while listening to the music, it wouldn't matter a jot if I was listening to the UK version when I was doing that. But I'd love those audiophile pressings. I'd love them all, but you have to make a judgment around cost benefit.
Yeah. Shall we move on to the next topic?
What do we got?
Listening spaces. And
it's the kitchen for you, isn't it, David? all that
Actually, I
dishwashing
think
you've been doing?
I think the kitchen and the bathrooms are the only place in the house which haven't got a hi-fi setup.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah. Go on, Brian.
Go on, Brian.
All right. We'll have to talk about washing the dishes again in this for this question. Funny thing is, on the vinyl community, one of the rites of passage, it seems to me, of VC hosts, us influencers or whatever we call ourselves, YouTubers, is the room tour, which I've never done because I don't actually have a room. Despite what you see behind me, this is like a basement with my workspaces over there, and there's a large screen TV. And also it's being filled up right now. It's being filled up with furniture from upstairs because we're going to do a renovation. So it's kind of crazy right now. But I don't have a room per se. I have in the basement, in fact, I don't even have a turntable. There's no turntable on this floor. There's a CD player, there's speakers, but my actual listening space is upstairs and my turntable is in the dining room. It's fairly open space. So when someone's doing dishes, it kind of overwhelms the sound. There's a TV in the next room and there's these sliding pocket doors. So sometimes the TV bleeds through and I'm listening there. There's this it's a very active space. The door sometimes, it's just very, very active. Sometimes the windows are open. So it's not anywhere close to an ideal setting. It's not close to an audiophile setting. And then when it comes to, so that's what I'm dealing with now. I am planning to buy a new turntable, and that may mean that my upstairs turntable will come down here, which will be useful. But I have fairly pedestrian equipment in the past, and this is, every time I mention this, it makes me angry because I used to have a dual turntable. I had a Techniques at one point. I sold records and I sold my turntable when I thought that CDs were the best thing ever, and I regret that, of course. So when I got back into vinyl about 13 years ago, I bought a Project, and I wish I hadn't because it's really an awful turntable. So I am looking for something else. And I have, because of space, like upstairs where the dining room is, I don't have space for large speakers. So I have smallish Klipsch speakers, which again aren't the best. So it's not a perfect setup by any means. And I wish it was better. So my plan is to bring a turntable down here, have a better setup down here, but currently I don't. So I'm competing with all sorts of other noises, and I have children, right? I have 2 small children at home all the time. I have 2 older children who sometimes are here, sometimes are not. So it's a really challenging space to listen to music. And my partner has an office at the back of the house. So I can't really listen to music when I want to sometimes because other things that are happening. So down here, I listen to CDs because I have a CD player that actually works down here. So it's a very strange thing. Now, when I put a turntable down here, I have this internal conversation with myself. Does that mean I can come down here and listen to music while everyone else is upstairs doing things? Can I just abandon them and come down here? So I have that guilt factor already, even though I haven't put a turntable down here. So this is what I'm thinking about. But that is, so the short answer is, I wish I had a better space. And I wish I had a better system. On the other hand, I own a house in downtown Toronto, which is quite alarming when I think about it. And the younger me could never imagine that happening. So I can't complain too much. So that's sort of the situation I'm dealing with. And honestly, washing dishes is the thing that irritates me because the sound of the faucet running or the dishwasher is so overpowering. It just makes me really, it's terrible. So that's it. So you'll never get a room tour out of me because I don't really have a room.
That must be a really loud tap.
It is. Actually, in the renovation, I said to her, "Can you find a quiet tap?" I just said, "What do you mean?" I said, "This tap is so loud."
Yeah, can you do the dishes only when I'm at the house?
Yeah, that could be your room tour. You're doing the dishes. I do what you said about how a designated area. I find that weird. How you go away from everything else in your house and okay, goodbye everybody. Now I'm going to listen in my cone of silence kind of vibe. I don't know. It's an active experience for me. Yeah, I don't know. I've just jumped in. I'm sitting at my dining room table here at the moment. So, and it's an open room where the lounge room and kitchen are all sort of one space. So yeah, there's music when I am doing dishes, and music when I sit down in front of it and listen to it. But it's usually I just have music going on all the time. I don't have a set aside space. It's just part of the living area where my stereo is set up. So it's all and it's always on. So, and my house is like an apartment, so I can hear it from anywhere. I don't need separate stereo system set up, even though I do have another amplifier in a cupboard and another turntable for maybe one day. But yeah, it's a pretty open area, and I live near a main road as well, so that I have a little bit of sound from outside as well, which can be a little bit annoying, but it doesn't seem to be as loud as your tap, Brian.
Nothing's as loud as that tap.
David?
Well, obviously, you guys know that my situation is a bit different. Is that we moved into this house before we had children, and it was immediately me and Jill divvied up the rooms. I mean, we had a shared space and we had like hobby rooms, and I then within 2 or 3 years I started working for myself. So I was working a lot from home when I wasn't with clients. So I created this office space here, a listening room that is almost exclusively vinyl at the top of the house, and got another office space in the house which has got a hi-fi setup as well, and I've kind of just filled in the gaps. So before the children came along and started adding loads of detritus to the house, I kind of laid claim to let me worry about the storage. And of course, the storage, when you open the door, is like loads of vinyl hidden behind the door. So I've kind of, and it is a constant battle. But I guess the most important thing to say about the whole thing is that I have really enjoyed having a space where I can disappear for an hour or 2 hours. If they're watching the TV or doing something else, homework, or the girls are doing homework and stuff like that, I really like the idea that I can go to a different dedicated space and experience the music without all those other distractions. And I know I'm lucky, but I worked a long time to be able to have that privilege. So I don't feel guilty about it, but I am lucky. So I do have that. But having said that, finally, I will say one last thing. I would love to have a music room designed by somebody who was into sound treatments and so on. And I'm afraid that's never going to happen. So even though I've got multiple listening spaces, none of them are optimized. Damn it.
Yeah.
I have a friend who has just recently, he's more audiophile type of person than me, but he's had treatments put in his lounge room for his setup, and he's got these hanging from his roof.
Yeah.
I don't know what the proper word is.
I know what they are. Yeah.
But anyway, his wife refers to them. She just says, "Why do we have to have a refrigerator hanging from our roof?" She doesn't like it at all.
They do look ugly, don't they? A lot of them really look ugly. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it sounds like you, Brian, by the way. You look like that basement setup there looks like a good space. And, give yourself permission to be present when you're with the family, and then being consciously absent with permission for short periods of time. You can find a balance there, maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking that eventually, with a turntable down here, a system down here, I will be distracted from any work that I'm doing. So I will just play records during business hours. So,
do you ever because basements aren't, not many houses have basements over here, but I always, and it's because of the VC, I never thought about it, because when you watch American movies, and everyone always has a basement where they can teenager or whatever would have their setup in there. But then since I've been in the VC, I've heard some nightmare stories. The main one that comes to my mind is Mike Carlson, the flooding in the basement, and that would be like, that would worry me.
Well, on that topic though, when we bought this house, it had an unfinished cellar, so we had it underpinned, which means lowering the floor, which meant abatement for things like water, so a backwater valve, 2 sump pumps, waterproofing membrane, and I have my shelves here off the floor. They're like 6 inches off the floor. I have a platform that they're on. And in the time since we've had that done, we've had no issues with water at all. It does concern me though. It is, I'm not going to say that it's entirely risk-free, but I feel pretty confident now that, I mean, one of our sump pumps never activates because there's just no water beneath the foundation to expel. There's that kind of a weird extra room back here. That one does have water coming out of it it's ejected into the backyard. So I am concerned about it. It's not damp though, and it's actually quite fine. Occasionally you get a spider, but so far so good. They were, by the way, maybe about 3 years ago, all my records were in the dining room. Now, can you imagine that? Like you, Ben, so we have a dining room table with a wall of records behind, and it became a situation where I felt like I had to move them. I felt like I had to I'm taking them over the team. I'm putting my records downstairs because I felt like that was the civilized thing to do. So that's why they're here.
So to me, it's a bit changed.
It's a good conversation.
Around. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. You have friends or you or other people. Hey, you are listening to music. Yeah.
Is anyone still watching us, guys? Because
yeah, we have 30
listening spaces.
13 people. Yeah, I don't have a dedicated listening space. I used to have one back in the days when I was still living in France. I used to have a house, and it was very fun. And I had one system in the basement, one system in my office room. Now it's a little bit complicated. It's a small apartment, so it's like maybe you, Brian. It's a kitchen, living room, dining room. CD room, vinyl room, everything. So it's not very optimal, but things may change maybe in the future.
MGK Boston's got it worked out. He's got his beer free course.
Sorry, Ben, will you say that again? Because I missed that. I spoke up. So say it again, Ben.
I was just saw in the comments, Mike MGK Boston. He's got the right idea. He's got his beer fridge in there within his listening room. That's the way.
That must affect the sound. But he's got a problem, hasn't he? He's got a wild animal living in his listening room. My head in.
Well, at least his fridge is on the floor and not like my friends where they're hanging from the roof.
Yeah. So I mean, just to maybe move it on slightly, but what aspirations do you have? So we all have to live within our limitations, but have any of you guys got this dream that you are going to get there one day and it's going to be like this, or are you quite comfortable the way it is?
That's a
I'll probably die I would say with the way house prices are over here.
No, it's a good question, because the question I get quite frequently from my better half is, what are you going to do with your records when you retire? And I think I mentioned to you, David, a while ago. It's like, I plan to listen to them. I'll finally have time to, but I think there's this expectation that when I retire, I will divest myself. So my view is I'd like to improve my equipment. That's the goal for sure. But it's sort of this tension, not a tension. I wouldn't say it's tense, but there's this idea that maybe someday we'll downsize to a smaller place, which wouldn't accommodate this kind of collection. But it's an open question, but definitely better equipment. That would be my medium-term goal or short-term goal.
Yeah, me as well. If I have a chance to buy even a small house, having a dedicated room, with better, because here in North America the floor is like wooden. So if you have a person that walks like very strong on the floor, your tone is doing like that. So yeah, improving the equipment, having a designated room. Yeah, so definitely.
I often say, don't jump near the turntable. Happens almost daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Jill occasionally says to me, "Why don't you buy an apartment somewhere, or a flat, or another house in the neighborhood, and move everything there?"
That sounds both good and bad at the same time.
It
What is
does,
that?
doesn't it? Yeah. And don't come back. I'll change the locks.
Yeah.
It's a good job she's not watching this live stream, especially that number 204 I mentioned earlier.
Well, it's after 12 and I'm still doing all right.
Good man.
Okay, next topic. Ooh,
Colton sends his regards. So
Yeah.
that was from Mike's
Mike's
What did
cat.
he say there? What did he say?
Hold on, I will.
Ah.
Yeah. Poor
You
little
take
baby.
it to the, what do you call that? What's that profession where they cut nails? You know, you cut people's nails. What is it? Chiropodist, is it?
Have the
I'm just
terms.
saying they should take that cat. They should cut its claws, file its claws down. Anyway,
So, yep.
Whoa.
Ooh. Who wants to go first?
So are we going to do like one at a time around, or everyone's going to do all theirs at once, like sort of round robin, or?
why not? Why not?
I don't have a
What?
physical format or any copy to show of those albums I was thinking of. So just to.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same because I've only got good records.
Didn't mention that in that way, but
Well, I've definitely got 3 lousy albums by bands and artists that I really like.
All right.
yeah, go ahead.
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah,
with
sure.
one? I'll do one.
Okay.
I was hesitating. Yeah.
This album, I got into Genesis in the early 1970s, and I could gradually see them after Peter Gabriel and Steve Hackett left. They gradually got more and more, not just mainstream, but the music was less crafted than it used to be. It was more improvised in the studio, and they seemed to get the basic tracks down really quite quickly through their improvisation sessions, and then they embellished them, and then they released them. And they didn't always do that, because later on there are some examples of really well crafted records that are very commercial as well. But this one is my least favorite Genesis album of all, and it starts with Mama, which is considered to be some sort of a classic. I think it is just lame, absolutely lame. So I know I get some flack when I talk about this album to Genesis fans, but everything's undercooked here as far as I'm concerned. So that to me is an album that never gets played in this house, never.
What's your feeling on Home by the Sea? You feel that's a bad track?
It's rubbish. Undercooked. You know, they kind of they made a concession to the old fans by putting a proggy longer track, or 2 tracks together in that case, and like a little bit of a sweet. But it's just like, oh, come on, guys, go back and do a bit more work on it. You know, something could be good here. Instead, it's merely acceptable, in my judgment. I'm glad you agree, Brian.
Well, I was never fond of Illegal Alien. I think the video is worse than the song itself. But interesting comment. And you didn't. What about the album cover?
Yeah, we got a question on the worst album covers of all time. I've already got one. There it is. Bloody rubbish.
Okay.
What is it on the cover? I can't make it out.
I think it's called, like Peter Gabriel's albums. Early Peter Gabriel's albums were called number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And in North America, they called them Car, Scratch, Melt, and Security. This one they call Shapes.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like little children's building blocks. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I think it's from a
Okay.
shape sorter. Yeah,
Yeah,
kids match up the shape with the slot or something.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For a second there, I thought you were going to say this one they call shit, not shit.
You can't say that on YouTube, can you?
You can
Oh
say on
god,
the channel.
my channel will
if
be
you,
complete.
if you
I might be
want.
banned on my channel.
Yeah. So anyway, that was one of 3 lousy albums by artists I really like. So over to someone else.
Yeah. Okay, I don't have a physical form, but I
You want
thought maybe the Queen. I grew up with Queen when I was kid. The Flash Gordon album they released in 82. It's not a good one. I wouldn't say awful because it's a strong word to my feelings, but it's definitely not their best. And I used to have on cassette, I think, back in the days, but I never bought on vinyl or on CD. So cannot show anything, guys. But yeah, that one, yeah. And I think the movie wasn't a great
Haven't got it
one
yet.
either. Yeah, yeah. Wants to Ben or Brian? Okay, Brian, go ahead.
You go,
Oh,
Brian.
all right. So, awful albums by favorite artist. So I went with my favorite artist. This is his 11th record. This is Leonard Cohen's Dear Heather. And I think it's fair to say by this time we knew he couldn't sing anymore, but I think everyone forgave him of that because otherwise he's very engaging. And the couple surprising things about this record is it was his highest charting record since his second record, which I find just baffling to me. It has an adult contemporary production style. I think the production is pretty awful. There are female background singers, but I think they're badly deployed and poorly directed. And on one of the tracks, Leonard actually is the background singer to these women he has on the record. He dedicated it to his publisher, which is fair enough. And I think it's very, in some ways, it's just 4 cover versions on here, which I think is troubling because one thing we've always loved, or one thing I've always loved from Leonard Cohen is his lyrics. So to have 4 cover versions, I don't know what that means. He maybe ran out of material. It's a very strange. It's really bizarre to me, this record. I remember once reading on social media, someone said something like Leonard sounded like a guest star on his own record, which is, I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
There are some really clever lyrics here, some good lyrics, like On That Day, I think is great. I think that's a fantastic lyrical piece, but I don't think the production really holds up. There are 2 tracks, Nightingale, and the other one is The Faith. And I would say those are the 2 worst Leonard Cohen songs in existence. Now, some people, when thinking of Leonard Cohen, would choose Death of a Ladies' Man as the worst record, but this, in my opinion, is far worse. It's a lot of spoken word things because, as I mentioned, he couldn't really sing anymore. But I think it's really hampered by the production. It ends up sounding really bland, and there's some corny saxophone in it. So I give this one the lowest. If I were to rank Leonard Cohen records, this would be right near the bottom. So that's number 1 for me.
What do you think of 10 New Songs?
I think it's much better.
Yeah. I love
mean,
his voice when he gets older. His voice is so much full of wisdom and richness, you know?
Yeah, he would say
me
it's because
too.
I smoked 10,000 cigarettes, and I think that really works. I think it did work on his later records, but for this one, I don't know. I think he misdirected a little bit. But
It was Sharon Robinson kind of.
While you were talking, then, Brian,
sorry,
I pulled that record out while you were talking about it, Brian, just as because I was also like, I don't remember the last time I listened to this record, and I was looking at what songs are on the back, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is not familiar to me at all anymore.
I mean, just the opening. The opening track, "Go No More a Roving," is just so it's the Lord Byron poem, and it just sounds like the worst kind of adult contemporary music you could imagine. And I remember playing this when someone was in the house, and they were like, "This is Leonard Cohen." Yes, it is. So.
I'm gonna dig that one out. I've got it as well, but I'm just like you, Ben. You know, I'm not that familiar with it, even though I've got it.
and that just made me think there must be a reason why from when I last listened to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, will I go?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, because of this is the VC, I'm going to cheat to start with, and it's not an album. It's actually a 10-inch, and it's by one of my favorite Australian artists, and I'm pretty much a completist on him, and that's Nick Cave. I absolutely love pretty much everything he's done.
Me too.
But this song, which was there was a doco about him a few years back called 20,000 Days on Earth, which was a great doco. And during the doco, they were recording, I think it was it Push the Sky Away or I think it was around that period.
Well, I think it was someone where he talked about
Skeleton Tree was no. Skeleton Tree, I remember, was the One More Time with Feeling doco.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this was a song he was playing as the doco goes, and it didn't appear on Push the Sky Away. And I was just, and at the time I was watching it, and I thought, God, I'm glad that didn't end up on the record. It's just shit. It's really ordinary. So, like, it was kind of like if you typed "do a Nick Cave song" in the style of Nick Cave into AI, this would come out, I reckon. And it is the Give Us a Kiss, and it's just, I love Nick Cave, but it is just a lame song. And it's even more shown up by the fact that on the B-side, there's a fantastic live version of Jubilee Street.
Yeah.
And I actually saw Nick Cave about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was just him solo on piano, and Colin Greenwood was playing bass. And he was talking about how he said, there were some songs like with the Bad Seeds, they get rejected. But and then he said, but I've always loved this song. And then he started playing this, and I was like, oh no, this is the time to get a beer and go to the toilet. So it's just, yeah, it's not even strong enough to elicit like hate for the song. It's just very pedestrian.
I've never heard it, even though I really like Nick Cave. I've never heard it, probably because I don't stream.
Yeah,
weirdly,
well,
it makes me want to listen to the song.
They released it on vinyl, and you just got to get, like Brian says, when you're into someone, you've got to get them all.
You got to get them, yeah. You got to get them.
And I was making up my mind yesterday, and probably if I had a copy, maybe that Emerson, Lake and Palmer's record Love Beach, they dropped at the early 70s. Yeah, I don't have a copy of, but I don't know. What do you think of that one, David, as a prog?
Well, I know that that's a reputation. Mostly ELP fans hate it, and they hated it because of the cover, because they're all standing there in some Bahamian beach, in a sunset and all that sort of stuff. But I listened to that a few months ago, and I thought, if you come at it with fresh ears, because I never bought it when it first came out, but you pick up a copy over the years. I listened to it and I thought, it's not bad. It's not bad.
Okay.
But it ain't Tarkus, or it ain't.
I've actually seen someone that.
Say it again, man.
And the cover reminded me. I said I've actually seen a few people show that record in the VC, and the cover actually reminded me of one of my uncle's Pablo Cruz's records.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's a solid choice. Let me pick another one. I mentioned this earlier in response to Ben boasting about this great record that he got, and it was this one. And this has got it's a double vinyl album. It has got this track on it, Outlaw Pete, which opens. It's about 8 minutes, and it's kind of like a children's story, really. but it's really dynamic. It's good live, and I've seen him perform it live, and it plays to the strengths of the E Street Band, and the wrestler's good. There are some good tracks on this album, but it's produced by Brendan O'Brien. So Brendan O'Brien, somebody remind me, is it was it Pearl Jam? It was Pearl Jam producer, yeah. Bruce Springsteen's deaf. He's got to be deaf, because there's no way he listens to this album in the studio and the playback and think, "Hey, that's great," you know, that's the one to release, because it sounds absolute rank. And he did another album around this time called Magic, which is full of fantastic songs. They were amazing live, kind of around contemporary politics a little bit, and it was, you know, you could sense some of that outrage and anger coming through in these lyrics, and they sounded great. But the album sounds like it was recorded underwater, because Brendan O'Brien doesn't know how to record drums, and so everything sounds splashy and flat and horrible. And so this is consigned to my bin of the worst albums by good artists. So there you go. Working on a Dream, one to avoid, or pick up last only if you have to.
Hey,
Queen
Brian.
in the Supermarket. Yeah.
I was just
like
going to say exactly that about Queen in the
Queen in the
Supermarket, because I'm
Supermarket.
sure I've heard you talk about it before.
Yeah. It's a terrible song.
Yes.
Wait, who was next? Was it me that was next?
Yeah, it was you.
Yeah.
Just I have a Springsteen coming up, but that's next after this. So, okay, this is really, I mean, it's a shame to call it The Clash. It's really half The Clash, right? Because we're down to Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon. When I first saw this album cover, I thought, yeah, The Clash are going to go back and do like a true punk record, given the image on this cover. That's not what happened. And if people know this record, you know what I'm going to say. It's kind of destroyed by synthesizers and drum machines. The only track that I really like is This Is England. This is a single from that record. That's actually a pretty good track. But the rest is just, I can't even tell you how many times I listened to this, because I was so appalled by it. It just is the worst kind of swan song for any band. It's really amazingly they toured this record. I don't want to say too much, because I'll just be repeating myself, but cut the crap. I mean, it really is. If they cut the crap, there'd be nothing left on this record except for one track perhaps, but pretty terrible. Maybe an obvious choice, but it just, I don't even know why I own it, because I'm a completist, so I have to have it, but I'll probably never ever play this again. So
they did more than tour that. They toured. They did a busking tour for that album with Paul and Joe out front, and I saw them in a little hall with about 30 people play for about an hour, when the drummer was playing on a chair, a wooden chair, and a cardboard box. And I offered Joe and Paul a lift to the next gig, which was about 15 miles away in my beat up little Mini. And they said, no, the busking tour, the rule is, fella, that we have to use public transport. So they were off to the station to catch the train.
hilarious.
And I still don't
By the
have
way,
that. I don't have that. I've got everything by them, but not that.
It's hard to find, I think, but there is a rebooted version of this on YouTube. Some guy redid it. Like I don't know how he got he seemed to have, I don't know if he had the tapes or what he had, but he actually redid it. It's much better, but still doesn't really grab me, but it is much better. But
Great.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, stretching the rules. Probably no secret that I really into King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and they had they had two drummers, and one of those drummers, Eric Moore, he had the Flightless Records label, which was what he started to release their stuff, and they ended up he's now not in the band, so we can concentrate on the label. And there was a period where pretty much anything on that label was fantastic, and so I would just buy it if I saw the Flightless thing. So but this talk, I am a drummer and I should know better to buy an album fronted by a drummer. So this guy if you know King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, there's Ambrose Kenny Smith. He's the guy who plays harmonica and sings a little bit. He has a side band called the Murlocs, and the drummer from that band is the front man of this piece of shit called Baked Beans. And it's about as imaginative as the title. It's just really generic, kind of. It's trying to be a little bit garage rock, trying to be a little bit, a bit of Stonesy swagger and stuff like that. But it's got no guts and no grit to it. It's really, really bad. And because I'm an idiot, I bought their follow-up one, hoping it would be better, but it's actually even worse. It's just really generic and just boring. So apparently these are worth a bit because they're on the Flightless label, so I'm going to try and offload them at some stage.
Nice one.
Yeah, I don't have any more to make mention of. So
Okay, so it's me again.
it is. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm afraid. Oh,
I did a video recently of a rundown of the. I've started a series which is like one album only. If I only had one album by some of my favorite artists, which one would I distill everything down to? And I listened. The Yes video was I was going to say labor of love, but it was torture because I had to work my way through all of the albums either on vinyl or CD that I've got, and even the later stuff, which is a bit sketchy. But one of the things that what emerged from this marathon listening experience was that the glue that knitted the band together. And I know people think Chris Squire, the bass player, was the guy who was like the founder and this, that, and the other. But the glue is Steve Howe and his guitar, because he plays guitar in a quite a unique way, a very distinctive way, rather than unique, very distinctive way. And when I was playing through all these albums and I got to this album, you got Trevor Rabin playing the guitar. Very accomplished guitarist. I don't know about his career. Never been really interested, but there's no reason for me to doubt that he's a very, very good guitarist. But his guitar sound is so generic in comparison to Steve Howe. This is like a completely different band, even though it's got John Anderson singing, Owner of a Lonely Heart, and other, MTV favorites sort of thing. But yeah, I just think I know people love this album, but I think it's absolute tripe. So yeah, there you go. That's my third and final one.
one good thing about this album is that some younger people, they discover Yes because of that one, and if they want to go a little bit deeper into their early prog stuff, their real stuff, it's because of that one.
Point.
Yeah, so
I could probably help them out because I've got 3 copies on vinyl and 1 on CD. What sort of mug am I?
That was the first Yes record I ever owned. So
have you still got it though? That's the question.
You
it's
were
still
one
here.
of the young people, Brian.
I was one of the. Sorry, it cracked. I just thought
You were one of those young people.
That's right. That's right. All right, so I guess it's back to me. So, this is my choice for the worst Bruce Springsteen record. Now, David, I saw your expression there; it's pretty hilarious. Now, I know some people will disagree with me.
Me.
Well, first of all, I should say that this is the original pressing. It's on one record, so there's I think 59 minutes on here somehow. And I know it was recut on 2 LPs more recently, but this is the original from 1992. Now, apparently, he recorded this in 1990, and it sat on the shelf for a couple of years. I will say I listened to this yesterday, and I like it better than I thought I did. And I was thinking maybe that's what Bruce thought when he released it in 1992. Maybe he thought that it was better than he remembered. So I just find there's a lot of really pop on this that doesn't really always work for me. Like I don't mind Human Touch. I think is a Springsteen classic, Soul Driver, 57 channels, nothing on. That's okay. But I think there's some songs on here that just, for me, it seems generic and uninspired. And I think it actually sounds dated, probably from the day it was released. Like Real Man. I think that's Real Man and Man's Job. I think
Man's
those are
Job's
terrible.
great.
I think Pony Board. Really? Wow.
Yeah.
This one, there was one other, my second choice for a Springsteen record was actually High Hopes, but I landed on this one because I've just never really enjoyed it. And I think Lucky Town is a much better record, but there's no denying that there's a couple of good songs in here, but I Wish I Were Blind just kind of bores me. Some of the songs are boring, I think. Maybe I should buy the double LP version and it will sound better, but
I wish I were
I don't know. I don't
blind.
like the production either. The synthy production I didn't really love. Sorry, David. I think from your expression, I gather you like this one.
Well, I do. It's not one of the best albums, but I do like it. And I mean, I Wish I Were Blind is a lovely song, and I think Man's Job is a good soul number. But I think a lot of people really diss that album and Lucky Town because it's not the fabled E Street Band. And there are a lot of fans out there who are fixated with hearing Backstreets or Badlands yet again. And so it's kind of refreshing to go back to those albums. And it's, if you crank it up volume wise, it sounds pretty good. So I quite like it.
Well, I find most Springsteen albums to be kind of really engaging, and you're there for a journey. There's some sort of tension in his music, and I think that is lost here for me anyway. I don't get that sense here.
Yeah. That does make sense, yeah.
Was that around the time when it was a bit of a thing for people who were releasing 2 records at once? Because I seem to remember that and that god-awful Guns N' Roses thing around the same time, and a couple of others.
Yeah, that happened at the same time. I don't know if it was a thing. Yeah.
I think Bruce's might have been the first one. At least the first one in that particular era,
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, they're doing that and filling up 80 minutes of CDs, and they really were trying to get as much out there as possible.
The tour was good. Live shows were still great, even though it wasn't the E Street Band. Ben, over to you.
Cool. All right. I don't have the album, but a favorite band of mine who were around in the 80s and who I saw record in the 90s were the Hard-Ons. Great melodic punk rock band, 3-piece, just killer stuff, good fun live. And their drummer Kesh was the singer, and he ended up I think he left the band and then rejoined the band when they got back together in about 2010 or something. And then they decided to keep going, and they replaced Kesh with another drummer and had a person just singing. And they got Tim Rogers from UMI to sing with them. And I really loved the first 2, maybe 3 UMI records, just really good rock records with nods to classic stuff as well as a bit of an indie vibe in there as well. But Tim Rogers is a complete knob and has spoiled UMI for me because I would try and see them live, and every time I see them, he's one of those people who you're like, in between songs, can someone please just take the microphone off him? Is it just crap comes out of his mouth constantly. And then recently I knew that him and the Hard-Ons had got together, and I wasn't interested at all. So it's not really album, it's more a live gig. I went and saw the Damned and the Hard-Ons with Tim Rogers with the support. And from the moment they come on, I hated it because they're all like a bit older than me. And they all walked out and they were all shirtless, which is a thing I don't like much. Very, very much. I don't want to see men's nipples live. And it was just like a barrage of it reminded me of going to early punk rock 90s, where before the PAs were a bit better in small clubs, and it was just a muddy mess of noise. And with Tim Rogers screaming his head off over the top of all of that. And I don't mind a bit of the old yelling and screaming, but he was just terrible. Like he had no power in his voice. And then there was a moment which he caught his reflection in Rat Scapy's drum kit behind him. He had like one of those Perspex sound barriers, and he was like looking at himself posing out in front of that, and it was just the most annoying gig. And it just felt like it took forever until the Dam came on, and and I'm sure the records are shit as well. I'll just leave it at that. Thanks, dear. Mike.
Yeah, I remember Julianne Phillips too. Yeah. Yeah, she was.
I don't.
When Springsteen came to the UK in '85, she used to. I think she was standing at the side of the stage at Newcastle St James's Park, the football ground, watching the show. But it never seemed right because she was like a top model, wasn't she? And he seemed to be much more of a gritty character and not as polished as she was. But hey ho, she was pretty.
Okay, has anyone some entry?
I'm done. I think that's the.
Yep.
That's yeah.
Okay, so final topic before the bonus question, if you might. Oh. Okay, let's start another stream because that will take forever to.
What else would I spend my money on? You know, you got to have a hobby. A man's got to have a hobby. So, you know, what do I do? Is just drink more beer, buy more bikes. Got too many of those as well. What do you do?
Stamps.
I tried that when I was about 10 years old.
Oh, I was
couldn't afford the expensive ones. It's a bit like these Morphi ones. Today,
Yeah.
I couldn't afford the expensive ones, so my collection was big but worthless. Like this.
Yeah, this is it's a tough question. My answer to that is yes, I wonder, and no, I don't wonder, because you know, I've had various. I don't know if this is a hobby or not. I don't think this is a hobby. People ask me why I collect records. I don't think I collect records. I buy records as a way to listen to music. So I don't think I'm a collector. I don't consider it a hobby. It's just that music has always been something I was interested in for a long time. I have had other hobbies throughout the years, and this is the one thing that sort of endured, or that sort of lasted. Not that I've given up other things entirely. So this is one that's always been with me. I guess I don't understand why people don't have music in their house. I once knew someone, her only source of music was a clock radio in her kitchen, and I was thinking, how do you listen to music on this? It doesn't sound good. You have it tuned to a really terrible radio station. Why do you not have at least some sort of boombox and some CDs? Why don't you have that at the very least? So I'm a little surprised when people don't have, and now with streaming, you go to people's houses, they don't have anything to show that they like music. Is nothing. They've got like a Bluetooth speaker. Yeah. And some of those sound okay, but that's it. Like my older kids have a phone and a Bluetooth speaker, no music on any physical format. So my question is to everyone else, like, if you don't collect music, if you don't have music, why is that? It seems this very strange thing to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
People just don't like stuff anymore, it seems.
Yeah.
My girls share a Spotify account. Oh, sorry, carry on, Ben. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, it's not when you go to people's houses now, they're pretty Spartan these days, and they don't have music, they don't have books, they don't have films or whatever. I don't know what other people are into.
Well, I've got I've got two daughters, and they have Spotify, and they've got a Bluetooth speaker, and they've got access to thousands of CDs and records, but they're not interested in the slightest. And just to pick up on the book theme there, Ben, I'm not a book collector, but I don't discard books. If I read a book and it's good, I'll put it on the shelf and I'll read it again 10 years later. And I've got a Kindle as well, and it's stuffed with content. But part of me thinks that one day Amazon, under instructions from higher authority, are going to start deleting certain titles from the library, and I'm going to open up my Kindle one day, and Orwell's 1984 isn't going to be there, so I'm going to have to go back to the paper copy.
I was just thinking to continue. I was noting that my two oldest kids don't really have any music, or none at all. And the surprising thing was, a few years ago, my daughter, who was in her early 20s, said, "I'm going to a concert tonight." I'm going, "Who are you going to see?" She said, "I'm going to go see the Pixies." And I was like amazed. I was actually quite happy, because how do you even know who the Pixies are? And yet she went. So I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never wonder.
Yeah, a lot
I
of
never
people.
wonder. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you go.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, a lot of people, it seems to be that gaming is the be all end all now, and actually a lot of people, that's how they discover music these days as well, which is odd to me. Like, I know people who I work with a guy who loves Grand Theft Auto, and apparently when you're in a car or something, you can choose different radio stations while you're driving around town, stealing and killing people and stuff like that. And he gets into music a lot through the radio stations that he listens to when he's playing the game, which is really, to me anyway, it's like, well, that's one way, I guess, of finding out about music. But it's just go to a record store.
I buy a lot of soundtracks, and I buy a lot of soundtracks blind. So if it looks good in the composer, somebody I recognize. But every time I'm rifling through the racks, there's all these soundtracks from games, and sometimes I don't realize it's a game, and I'll pick it up. But it's they're everywhere now. Yeah, so it is a musical genre now. I kind of think it, or at least a subgenre.
To me, the good thing is, I started to listen to music when I was probably collecting physical format cassette CD when I was probably 11 or 10 years old, in the mid 90s, and I was already in the 60s or 70s music. And now I have the feeling it's now or never. Yeah, to be able to find pressing of that era. If I wait another 50 years, it will be too late. Collecting those pressings are available. I have the chance to travel a lot, to finding them in good conditions. I don't know what it's for people who like jazz from the 50s or the 60s. I think certain genres, certain era are much more difficult to get a hold of. So and yeah, it's all about the experience. It's much more better to have an OG pressing, mono, whatever, from a band, rediscovering. So this is now. I think this is now a chance. If I don't do now, chances, price will be skyrocketing. You can see for album from the 80s. Yeah, I remember prior COVID, I could find a lot of great stuff, Human League or early Depeche Mode, The Cure, for less than 20 euros. And when I went back to France, everything is over 30, 35 in good conditions. So it's like, hey, it's now or never. It's not, now. It's still a right time to be able to find those used copy. If you are looking for original pressing, tomorrow will be too late. This is my feeling.
I think one genre that's particularly notorious for finding it very difficult to get good quality copies, and that's reggae. Because I think a lot of people played reggae records at parties and they're trashed to bits. And of course, you can get Bob Marley albums, reissues, and all that sort of stuff in pristine condition. But some of that dub stuff and that from the 60s and early 70s apparently is really difficult to get a hold of.
Yeah. When you talked about jazz too, because of that would be that's a whole other level, because some of those records, is pre-rock and roll, and they're like getting to be like 60, 70-year-old records, and when you're looking for an original album, which is, and so so the scarcity of them, I like jazz, but I'm so glad that there's a whole heap of good reissues available, because that's a whole different thing than trying to find a record from the 80s.
Let me say something about jazz, because I hoovered up a lot of jazz about 20 years ago, and the great thing about jazz, even OGs, is that very often the albums weren't listened to very often. So I've got some, I've got a version of Blue Train by Coltrane, probably early press, and it's absolutely pristine. And when I was picking up them in relative bulk, most of them were in absolutely excellent condition.
This is a good comment Darren just added, and I also see a difference in the French vinyl community. They are much more younger people, let's say in the 20th. Some are a teenager, and the way they discover and then buy vinyl records is totally different from my perspective. So I'm the old guy. I'm going to the record store, talk to the people, and being influenced by the manager. And some of these people never go to a brick and mortar store, physical store. They only scroll on YouTube or eBay, Discogs, and something blind purchase. Sometimes can be it can be a good or a bad surprise. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
just give me 1 minute, fellas.
Sure. But it is time, it is money, and when you move from one country to another, just like I did 2 years ago, then you start to realize how bulky it is when you have to pay for the shipment, when you don't sleep for a month because your collection is somewhere on a boat between Paris and Montreal, and but it's a passion. I know people collecting a lot of different stuff. You were mentioning stamps or other stuffs. I think it's much more easier to not to convince, but to talk to people who have other passions than people that don't have any interest in nothing. That simply work and sometimes travel. To talk to a person who likes other stuff, who invests his money, his time into collecting other items, it's much more easier. I have people in my family circle. They simply don't have any interest at all. So to start talking, hey, I get up I spend 5 hours talking to people I never have a chance to see, or traveling. Having 12 kilos in my suitcase of vinyl back from France. People say you're a bit crazy. Spotify. And yeah.
When I bought this in St. John's in Newfoundland, I bought a whole pile of stuff and put them in my case, and British Airways lost my case and didn't turn up for it until about a week later. I thought I'd lost all these fantastic records.
Oh man.
BA. You should travel with Air Canada next time. It's
thanks for that story. Now that I'm about to travel,
make sure
you're buy records here.
Make sure you've got that Wild Innocent AC shuffle under your arm there when you get on the plane, mate.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Shall we go with the bonus question Or are you okay, Ben? Are you okay, Brian, David? Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Everything's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, bonus
Hanging in there.
question. Last records we bought. Okay, Ben, you should go first.
All
if
right.
you want to. Yeah.
First one is I got the new Lemon Twigs record. A dream is all we know. There are two brothers. I think this might be their fifth record. If you like, that's a real. It's got a real 70s aesthetic to it. That real sort of power pop. Cool. They do great harmonies. Bit of that Big Star feel in there as well. Especially this one, they've really got into the power pop side of things. Then I think the previous record was half that, and then probably it was almost probably folky in parts. And I actually saw them at in Adelaide last year and wasn't sure what to expect because it was at a festival and thinking, oh, I don't know how this really quiet stuff is going to go down. But then they just come out and just rocked it which must have been a lot of the new stuff off this. Really cool, interesting young band, and probably not this cover, but some of their other ones. They look like they've just come straight out of the 70s with what they wear and the imagery and that kind of thing. And if you do like just big hooks and catchy choruses and that kind of power pop with a bit of the Big Star jangle in there, you really dig this band. Are we going to go one for one or do all five in one?
Yeah, let's just go round again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good idea. Yeah. Should I go? Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I was back in France for holidays, and this is not an obscure. This is a prog band from France. Ange is probably the most famous band. Very like Genesis. This is Atoll, and they sounded like a bit like Yes in the mid-70s. Two guitar player. They founded the band. This is the third album called Tertio from the band Atoll. And I didn't know much about that. I just happened to stumble upon in a store in the southern part of France. So I asked the manager, "Hey, can I listen to that record?" And the imagery, since I really like early 70s prog, a bit progressive folk. Simply took it back home. But I cannot really talking extensively since I listened to only 2 times since I came back from vacation. But it's early 75, I would say 74, French progressive rock. Brian?
All right. So this is another record store day thing. This is Wall of Voodoo live record store day issue. And I saw this on record store day and I didn't buy it, partly because of the price. Look at this price tag. Regular price $49.99. And I went back later and they had it half price, essentially. I passed over this because I wasn't sure. I really liked the first 2 Wall of Voodoo records with Stan Ridgway. And then I was watching Vinyl Richie and he mentioned this was the only thing he was looking for on record store day. So when I saw this for the sale price, I got it. It's limited to 2,000 copies on black ice vinyl, which just means that it's a bit, you won't see, it's a little translucentish, I guess, translucent. And this is really good. The first 2 Wall of Voodoo records I really love. This is from 1979. I don't remember University of California recording. I think this is really, really good if you like Wall of Voodoo. That was the first one one of the last 5 I bought.
Very good. I love Stan Ridgway, and I would love that album, but I've not seen it in physical format. This is a blind buy. I bought more than 5 records in this last week on my trip to Newcastle, but this is. Can you work out what the name of that woman is?
Adis Evanson?
Oh, Evanson's not difficult, is it?
Yeah.
Edith Evanson. Anyway,
Yeah.
it was in a bin which was 2 for £22, so £11 each. And I looked on the back, and she's from Iceland. And I'm 2/3 of the way through the side one. I'm playing it just before this live stream, and it's kind of got that lovely melancholic piano and some choral work on it as well. So it's so far so good. Blind Buy. That's the inner. I think that one there, probably MJK Boston would probably like that one. There you go.
Oh, I didn't present my record very well. I didn't show there's the Lemon Twigs vinyl.
Oh, nice.
And there's the inner there. Okay, is it my go? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Hang on, I'm just fighting this inner sleep. All right, next one. Australian band, Fill in the Tiles. Their record, Double Happiness, and they're on this label called Legless, which is just releasing some awesome stuff lately. One of the ones I did a whole special on a band called Split System with their 2 records, which are fantastic. This stuff's Fill in the Tiles was kind of like synthy punk stuff. Was actually quite catchy as well for, because some of the synthy punk stuff is really noisy, but this is not as noisy, and it's actually probably quite accessible and an easy pathway into that sort of stuff. And I'll show you. It's on very nice green vinyl.
Nice.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah.
And got a bit of this business here. So go that way. Yes. And some wordage there. But yeah, good record. I'm sort of still sinking my teeth into it, but it instantly jumped out of me from the word go. Go for it.
Sounds interesting.
A question for a quick question for you, David, from Darren.
Oh. Speaking of Iceland, have you heard of Emiliana Torini? She was discovered by Roland Orzabal. Incredible album. Yeah, let me just screenshot that because I need to. That's one I need to check out. Emiliana Torini. Hey, that pronunciation wasn't too difficult there, was it?
And okay, I'm next. So yeah, I did visit several cities in Germany while I was in Europe, and some of the band. This is a band. It was clearly on my want list. This is the band Jane Brain, very iconic label founded by 2 people in Germany, in Hamburg. We had amazing bands like Grobschnitt or Novalis, and this is a very Floydian music from the early 70s. I think this is the 3rd album. Not sure about that. And yeah, I was looking for albums of this band for years, and yeah, simply I paid 30 euro, which is probably $30. Very good conditions, very keyboard driven, early 70s stuff. So this is Jane.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is it
I love
back to
that
me again?
Brain
Is that right?
label. I got
Back to you,
rap rock record.
Brian. Yeah.
All right, so this is another record store day item that I originally passed over, and I didn't know about it until I was watching PC31, the Vinyl Policeman Mike mentioned this one, and so I passed on it, and then I went back, like the last record, and picked this up. This is The Outsiders. It's demos from their first album, Calling on Youth, and their EP 1 to Infinity. The Hype label's really interesting here because this is Adrian Borland's post-punk band. They're referred to here as the first post-punk band ever. With The Wire, and I love The Wire. So anyway, Adrian Borland went on to be in The Sound, and so look, this price was originally, I'm being really cheap, $44.99, marked down to $20. So I decided to get this on the strength of Mike's recommendation. But honestly, I don't know very much about them. I've only listened to this once, but I do like the sound. So I thought that'd be useful to get. And it's on this red vinyl. So they're demos. So, and some other tracks that didn't appear. So kind of rough sounding, I guess, or what you would expect from demos, but actually pretty interesting music. So something I wouldn't have paid full price for, but I thought it was worth getting for that sale price. So The Outsiders. If I didn't say The Outsiders, it's The Outsiders.
Is that The Outsiders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Outsiders.
Yeah. Right. I bought one of my 5 here is an album that I bought on release. But this version here has got a different cover. And I don't know whether it's any different at all apart from that. And that is Viva Hate by Mozza. I do not know where this version comes from, but it was £11. I could not possibly pass it up.
Yeah. Nice.
And it's the inner. I thought there was a hype sticker, but I can't seem to find it. But it's got like Liberty inner, like a 12-inch. And the Liberty label. This is released in 2012. Brian, you're the Mozza expert. What do you reckon?
No idea. Never seen it
You're
before.
an expert.
I have 2 copies. I have 2 copies of that record, but not that one.
All right. Okay. There you go. Maybe Ben can bring it back to you in exchange for that Springsteen one when he goes back to Canada. Anyway, I'll let you know what it's like. Hopefully it sounds different in some way.
Yeah.
God, we've done it.
Back to you, Ben. Yeah.
All right. My next one is an older, well, not too old. It's 2015 Robert Forster solo record, which I now think I have all of his solo records since the Go-Betweens. And I think it was last year, which helped me out. They reissued Danger in the Past and Calling from a Country Phone, and maybe one other one I'm not thinking of. But if you like the Go-Betweens, you sort of know what you're going to get with Robert Forster's solo record. Fantastic stuff, great lyrics. If I haven't said, this one's called Songs to Play. So yeah, he had a good run from like the Evangelist albums through to one called Inferno. 3 really great records in a row. And remember when before they'd come with CDs every now and then, records?
Yeah.
And that's nice. A bit of wordage and the inner. I think it's just black vinyl. Yeah. And right next to it, sorry, I'm doing a double play here, was a 12-inch of the Go-Betweens right here, which I was happy to get. And that's on Beggar's Banquet, which is cool.
Yep.
Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, I went back to the my ex-favorite store in France. I recently made a homage video. That's a guy very passionate about heavy metal. He does a lot of car booth festival, heavy metal stuff, and he will be soon retiring. So he had a part of his private collection in his store, and I found another Jane album.
Another one on Brain.
Another one, yeah. Wow. And this was previously owned by a Swiss guy. One, yeah. Just to mention, and it's pristine. This is the first album originally released on the Brain label. So really cool. I was expecting to find OJ German pressing from I don't know if you are familiar with Brain label, certainly, David, but with those bands, Grobschnitt, Novalis.
I've heard bits. I've got a few like Krautrock or German prog CD collections, but for some reason, maybe I was buying mostly British prog in the early mid 70s.
Yeah.
And I think my curiosity ran out of steam when punk came along, and I shifted over in that punk new wave, post-punk direction. And just and although it's been on the periphery of my potential list of wants, I've never really gone anywhere where I've seen them,
Yeah.
in the racks to buy. So, and I'm not one of these guys who uses eBay or Discogs to try and get obscure releases, at least obscure to me. But I'm curious.
This would be a difference. The first one I showed, Atoll, is a French prog band.
Yeah.
And okay, they copy, yes, let's say that they do it in their own way, but they copy it. What I find very, very interesting with the Germans is that they don't try to copy either the American or the English. They do their own path. You had Klaus Dinger, the drummer. He founded the band Neu. Hip hop was very like influenced by this drumming, Kraftwerk, all that scene from Düsseldorf. Munich was also important with Amundil and the band from Hamburg. So, and it's interesting what Germany produce, the krautrock, all the way what you can call krautrock music. So, and yeah, Brain Label was a very iconic one. Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure
Ryan.
I got some stuff on Brain Label in Japan last year for I think there's two Guru albums.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they were on Brain.
Brian,
I was lucky enough.
All right.
Actually, when you said I saw Michael Rother last year, which was awesome.
All right, so Warren Zevon, The Wind. This is his last record. This was 2003, but this is a 2024 repressing. It was repressed, I think, 3 or 4 times since 2003, but I missed them all, but ended up picking this one up. And this is one of those kind of like death records in the vein of Bowie's Black Star, Leonard Cohen's You Want It Darker. So the last record he was going to make. And the array of guest stars in here are quite interesting. We have David Lindley, Jim Keltner, Springsteen, Tom Petty. We got Jordan Zevon, Jackson Brown, T-Bone Burnett, Ry Cooder, Billy Bob Thornton. There's a huge number of guest stars on here, and actually it's pretty good. I will say I prefer earlyish Warren Zevon, but this is actually not bad. And kind of a sad record though to listen to because it's going to be his last. And anyway, so I got it for a good price. And oh yeah, Mike Campbell's also on here from the Heartbreakers. It's a big Joe Walsh even. So that's it. That's The Wind from Warren Zevon.
Sentimental Hygiene is the one I favored. Radiohead. Got this on CD. You can barely see the title, A Moon-Shaped Pool. This wasn't in the 2 for £22 bin. This was kind of full price, but I've been interested in buying it for a little while, so I thought I'd dive in. And it's got a nice picture inners as well. I don't think the vinyl's anything other than black. It's just black. So I've not spun this yet, but just acquired 2 days ago. Completes my Radiohead album collection.
Wow.
Yeah, I go through periods with Radiohead where I really like them, and then it just sounds like someone crying a lot when Tom York sings on other times. I have to be in the right headspace for it. But we're not into it.
Somebody did a video on one of their favorite tracks was Paranoid Android, and of course we all bought that when it first came out and bought the album at least on CD, which is what many of us did. But someone was so enthusiastic about that track, I just went to it and heard it afresh, and suddenly I'm listening to Radiohead again. That's what's great about the vinyl community. It's inspiring. I mean, that awful album cover Lou Reed album you showed the other day, Brian. I'm now curious. I'm going to take that one out. No. I'm curious.
I
I'm
hate
not
that
curious
album
about the
cover.
cover. Trust me. I'm curious about the music because you said it was one of his best albums.
That's just me. I could
It
be
could
wrong.
be the greatest album of all time, and I would never buy it because I know what that cover is.
Your next, Ben.
Okay, this is 3 records by one artist, which I am so glad that these have been reissued. And it's These Immortal Souls, which is Roland S. Howard's band, which you probably know from The Birthday Party. And he basically took off with Crime in the City Solutions rhythm section with his brother Harry Howard and Epic Soundtracks and Genevieve McGuckin as well. I had I've got a 12-inch I think of theirs as well, and which is that one, which is the one on Mute Records, and I had the what is it? This one. Get Lost, Don't Lie. So you like I know Brian, you bought Roland's one of his solo albums and really like that. I reckon you'd really get into this. It's probably not as sparse as his solo stuff. There's a bit more instrumentation, and it's probably closer to actually Crime in the City Solution in sound. But yeah, really cool to see these back in print, and kind of surprising as well. There's been some really cool reissues of Australian stuff like a heap of Ed Cooper stuff and Laughing Clowns and 90s pop favorites like Underground Lovers and stuff like that. I'll just show you the other ones. I can never get them back in the inners in any reasonable amount of time when I'm doing a video. So
We have plenty of time, Ben. No worries.
this was the last one that they did. I'm Never Gonna Die Again. I think it was the one in between this. He went off and did a record with Nicky Sudden, which is great as well. Some wordage, and they sound really good, like really good. I'd only heard this one before on CD, and yeah, this sounds really good. And then there's the third one was never an album. It's literally what it says, extras, and it's got half of it's songs which were not used, and then the other half is a live album, and it's got a cool cover of Some Velvet Morning, which there's a 12-inch I got of him doing that with Lydia Lunch as well, which is really cool. It's not exactly like jump on the dance floor stuff, but it's really good.
And before I took over, a question for you, David.
I showed the Lemon Twigs. Whoever says I only show Australian records, they're American.
Lemon Twigs.
Yeah. This is a.
Speaking of, do you own the 3LP?
And how's that chauvinistic?
What do you think? I don't have that 3LP reissue of the OK Computer album because they released a whole bunch of EPs on 12-inch that followed the release of OK Computer, and I bought most of those. So I think on that 3LP reissue, I've got most of the tracks, if not all of the tracks already. So even though I've been tempted to pull the trigger on it from a completist perspective, I haven't done so, and at least not yet.
I have a copy of the 3LP set. I had to return my copy, the first one, because one of the labels was misapplied and it ran out over the run out group, so I took it back. But I think it sounds okay on my system.
So we'll make it double for the next. It's a private collection. My the store I went to back in the days had, I made a perfect double. Yeah. Pretty hard to find in good conditions. Pretty hard to find. OG press. This one is not an OG. This one is a UK press, a later release from '85. But still, it's it's pretty brilliant. And this is a band on my want list. I didn't know much about that, and vinyl community and all the people talking about heavy blues, hard rock from the 70s, highlight on the fact that I should invest more time. And it's I don't know, what do you think? What do you guys think of Budgie? Uh, it's
I got the first 3 Budgie records, and they're
Yeah.
fantastic.
I don't know much about them.
And I
mean,
love
it
their
wasn't.
album. They're nuts.
I think it's a good.
Didn't
it's a
Burke
good-
Shelley have a high pitched voice or something?
Yeah. Often compared to Geddy Lee from Rush. Yeah.
So a bit of an acquired taste. So I've got a couple of the albums, but I haven't listened to them for donkey's years, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a good transition between early 70s Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and the late new wave of British metal, late 70s. Yeah, perhaps a bit underrated. I don't like this word underrated. You often see underrated band, underrated artist, but I think they are. And yeah, were they big in the UK at the time?
No.
Or
No. If you can imagine that there's like a hierarchy in any era, and there were like the rock royalty, yes, Genesis, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and then you go down to say like the third level, the third division, and then you would see bands like Budgie and maybe Barclay James Harvest and such like.
Okay.
So they were around, but they were definitely a bit fringe back in the day.
Okay, gotcha. Brian?
All right, so Love and Rockets, Hot Trip to Heaven. Of course, this is the remnants of Bauhaus. It's Bauhaus except for Peter Murphy, so it's Daniel Ash, David J, and Kevin Haskins. And this came out after a 5-year hiatus. So the last time was 89. This came out in 94. I think it's their 5th record. This has bonus tracks, which is kind of cool. And this is the weird record that kind of divided fans. Here's the inside. This is on black vinyl. It really divided fans because it has kind of like ambient techno psychedelia sound to it, and some fans didn't appreciate that. I kind of think it's the best thing they ever did, and I wish they had done more in this kind of style, because I think it's really, really great. They have these songs that just sort of quite lengthy songs in some cases. So I think it's actually really good. Yeah. So this, I'm not sure when this pressing came out. I can't remember, but it's recent. And they were quite pricey, but I found an excellent deal on Amazon. So I'm happy to have that. I think it's really good. I never owned it on CD, so I was hearing it really for the first time when I got it.
Okay, I guess it's me now, isn't it? Yeah. I've been listening to this album fairly frequently recently, and that's the Triffids, the Black Swan.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, I thought I had a second-hand copy, but this is in mint condition. It sounds fantastic. So I don't really know much about them, but I've got an earlier album as well, but this is really good. But I didn't buy that this week, because this week I bought this one after watching Ben's video with the yellow vinyl, and I haven't even opened the yellow vinyl yet. So let's have a look at the yellow vinyl, the Triffids, Born Sandy Devotional. There's the inner.
Classic record.
Well, I'm told, you told me it was a classic record. Oh, it's beautiful. Actually, look at that. Wow. Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Yeah, it's so
I don't know
good
about
to
you
see
guys.
that.
I've got a habit of putting the record back with the A side up always, so I can take it out blind and I know exactly what side I'm putting on the turntable. So, and I never put it back in without a kind of a rice paper inner, but I'm going to be super careful with this one. But yeah,
I have to confess, David,
Ben, you're an influencer. I said, Ben, you're an influencer here, so congratulations, you've got me to buy an album. Thanks, mate.
I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Okay. Black Swan's apparently quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite different. Yeah, it's probably, I think that was their last record, and they're I think it's a bit patchy, but not terrible, if you know what I mean. It's nothing compared to Born Sandy Devotional. That's just amazing record.
Great, good stuff. Looking forward to it.
Well, I also got in the mail this week a postcard, which I should have showed this earlier because I don't think he's watching now, from MGK Boston, the postcard king from Ottawa.
He's still there. He's still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might already have one.
All right. I do have another one. Check this cover out. The Drunk Mum's Beer Baby. Can you hazard a guess at what kind of music this would be?
This is not prog.
Correct.
I would say punk or no.
Yeah, like punk, but in the garage rock end of things. So you would want to meet them down a dark alley, that's for sure. And that again is on the this Legless record, which is Legless record label, which was great. They've got another 2 or 3. There's a notorious cover, which I don't of theirs, which I don't recommend looking up because you'll probably have the police after you not long after that. It's just a whole lot of wrong. It actually makes the Lou Reed one okay. And you know how much I hate that one. So there's so it's just good garage punk, which is actually, as much as it is in that thing, there is like these guys do have a handle on melody, and they're catchy songs actually, and it's really nice. I don't know if you can see, it's red, sort of wine red, marbly look to it. So yeah, good fun, just good, turn your brain off and jump around stuff.
I've just seen a question here from Fledge Fall. Yep. I've not been following the comments because I had them. I had it. I didn't even have them open. It said, "Isn't the record Under the Lamp getting too warm?" No, it's spinning, and it's the lamp is not too warm, so it's perfectly fine. I've just checked. Good call, though.
Thank you, Flagfall, for
good to see people concerned.
Yeah, indeed.
A question from
MGK. Yeah, I know the Drones. I've got a few Drones records, and I used to go see them quite a bit. I gotta say, I'm not much of a fan of his new band Tropical Fuckstorm, though. They're a bit poserish. That was a great record that just sailed by the Essential Radio Birdman there. Champion.
Just for you, mate. Just for you.
Yes. That is a great place to start with Radio Birdman. And it's
but if you listen to
Sub Pop, so everybody.
If you listen to the first disc, sorry, excuse me. If you listen to the first disc, you can easily put off because it's very punky. But by the time you get around to the second disc, it's really interesting. They turn into much, they fleshed out the song so much more. It's really nice, really nice.
Yeah, they're one of the few bands around that time which actually had a piano player, and they were considered a punk band. And I think they utilized that a lot more as they went along.
Yeah, very good.
So the last one I'm going to show you today is it's something also interesting. I was first day on my vacation in the southern part of France. I was strolling to the street of Nice, and this record store had this record playing. I had no idea about this. Is a local band from Nice, which called First Came the Shadow, and he had only on CD. And I really like this post-rock, ambient, a little bit proggy atmosphere. and no idea about that band really, and say, hey, yeah, they were showcasing this album a couple of days earlier. If you want to go back later in the day, I will have some vinyl copies. So I came back and I simply bought a copy just to support the local bands I had know nothing about. And yeah, it's a
Nice
bit
vinyl.
different. Yeah, on marble vinyl. Yeah, so yeah, it's a small, I would say, local band from this, and recorded in Germany, called First Came the Shadow, and I think this is their second or third album. Not even sure about that. So
I think I've seen that on the VC recently, actually.
really,
Yeah, I think somebody showed that recently.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
You-
Brian, it's your shout, isn't it?
All right, so I'm doubling up on an artist because I got another Love and Rockets album, which came out in '96, which was their 6th record. And this one, they returned to more of a guitar sound. Coincidentally, I was reading the All Music review of this, and the reviewer accused them of using Ministry-style guitars, which sounded ridiculous to me because there's nothing like that on here. This also has 4 bonus tracks. By the way, the record jacket shows this picture of a burned guitar because the house they were recording it in burned down. I don't think none of the band was injured, but this is what happened to their equipment. So it's a double record on black vinyl.
Whoa.
I've had this one. I have had on CD since '96 or whenever it came out, I guess. And so I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for their next record, which I think is Lift. That one hasn't been on vinyl ever, I don't think, and it's more of a almost like a dance record. I'm not sure I'll get that. I have the CD, but I was happy to find this because something I've wanted for a long time, and it sounds good. Oh, but I should say, my first copy of this was both records were warped, so I had to send it back. So I'm having that problem repeatedly now, where I have warped or scratched or seemingly just bad quality control. So I did send the first copy of this one back,
Wow.
and got a replacement.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that a little bit, having some problems. I've got to admit, I've been relatively lucky with stuff like that.
Yeah, I've been lucky for quite a long time, but recently it's been terrible, awful.
Yeah, there was probably only one I can think of recently, and it was when I say recently, it was the previous year, I think, of Record Store Day. There was a version of Nick Cave's Live Seeds, and
Yeah.
every single I took it back 3 or 4 times, and every single copy, it was just that pressing. I think it skipped in the same spot of Tupelo every single one, and I just finally gave up, and I was like,
Right.
it's the rest of it played perfectly and it sounds good, and I wanted to have it, so I just put up with it.
Guys, you don't know you're born, because back in the 70s, you'd go to a record shop and there'd be one copy, and you'd buy it and you'd take it home, and you'd have a dilemma. If there's a problem, the dilemma, do I take it back or hold on to it? I got a copy. I've still got my original version of Genesis Foxtrot. It's got this horrendous click in the first minute of Watcher of the Skies on the opening track. And I've also got a version of Cheap Tricks at Budokan, where the glue on the inner sleeve spilled onto the vinyl, and I daren't play the first track because it'll rip the stylus off the cartridge.
yeah,
You couldn't take it back because they couldn't get another one that quickly.
yeah. But Foxtrot
This
is not.
reminded me, Dave, of my uncle. Oh, sorry.
No. I was joking. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, my uncle, he was right into Led Zeppelin, and he had Led Zeppelin 3, and that was in the days where you would take your records to parties, and it managed to, I think it got a cigarette burn in the middle of Celebration Day, and then he thought, I know what I'll do next time I go to a party, I'll bring it with me, and if someone else has got another copy, I'll swap it over. And so he actually did, and he got the copy back, and on the same song there was a big daub of glue, like what you reminded me of. So
Nice one.
And so for years when I was young and getting like a lot of teenagers getting into that sort of hard rock stuff, I had this on cassette. He literally taped it, and you could hear he lifted up the needle and put it down on the next song on my tape, and that was the way I heard it for years and years and years.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's my turn, isn't it, for the last of the 5 albums that I've just recently bought, and it is the Dark Side mixes of Peter Gabriel's latest album. I've had this on CD since it came out. It's there's the Bright Side mix and there's a Dark Side mix, and there's a box set that includes everything for about £120 or something like that. But this was 35 quid, and it's really good. I saw him on tour last year. Slightly disappointing, but the tracks are pretty good. It's a good album. I quite like it. So there you go. That's my. But I bought loads more records, but those are the 5 most recent ones from the last shop I went to this week.
Can I
don't
just
have-
ask, David?
Yeah.
I've heard what is the difference between is it the bright and the dark mix of that record?
Right side mix, dark side mix. I mean, I have to say it, unless I'm really, because like I was saying before, I concentrate when I listen to vinyl, but not necessarily when I listen to CD. So because I don't play them back to back, I don't really notice that much. But apparently it's just you know, I'm waffling here. It just feels like to me the Bright Side mix is what it says on the tin. It's like a bit more up. The vocals a bit more stronger, you know. But I mean, has anybody else got these albums?
Not because it's. I was waiting for the box set, but it's freaking expensive.
It is, yeah.
So I'm considering buying the CDs because you can have both versions on CDs for $20 something.
And you get a third CD of the Atmos mix, I think it is.
Yeah, exactly.
If
Yes.
you've got a setup. I mean, I don't, but if you did.
I know Steve from All the Words to Stage. He has or he purchased the box set recently, and I was hoping to find a good deal in Europe, but still it's $130 something, pretty much everywhere. So
yeah, I did pick it up actually this week, but it was just too expensive, and I thought I can't justify it.
Yep.
It's a clever way to get a lot of people to buy 2 of the same record.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what else I bought. Let me just throw this one up for £15. I bought this.
Oh, cool.
It's triple box set.
Nice.
For £15. And this is one of the reasons why you don't necessarily go for these things, because I think the second and third disc has got all like remixes. And, you know, back in the early 90s and, of course, the 80s, all these 12-inch mixes went on forever. And so it's good. I haven't opened. Well, I've opened it, but I've not played it yet. So I'm going to be interested in giving that a spin. But at least that's got different versions of the tracks on. I'm not so sure about the Peter Gabriel one.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I pulled this out before when you were talking about Iceland, and I was lucky enough to go there a couple of years ago. And I went in. It's just called the Reykjavik Record Shop. And they were playing this. I'm not even going to begin to try and pronounce that. And it's just like a 2-piece, like modern jazz of just a drummer and a sax player. And it's just stripped right down to the absolute elements. And there's lots and lots of space in this. And it's quite incredible, actually. I don't know how many of these were made, or if they were just a local band. Like that's the record label. It's just the same as the name of the shop. And I bought a 7-inch off the guy as well, which was a local. I can't remember the name of it, but it was like really good electronic stuff. But yeah, it just reminded me when you said Iceland. And yeah, that's a cool place to go too. But man, it's an expensive place to go to.
Wow.
Well, that
was a comment about Peter Gabriel, the Gabriel album, I think, that it's a bit of a grower.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, you would buy albums and not expect to like them until you played them about half a dozen times. So these days, it doesn't immediately grab you. It ends up on the Calyx for the next 10 years.
That's kind of the cool thing about like people who've been around a while, who you collect a lot of their records where ones don't work for you straight away, and then you go back to the Calex and pull out that one that always sort of the penny didn't drop, and then on that given day, it's all of a sudden all makes sense to you.
That's Love Beach by ELP.
Yeah, I like.
I will re-listen it once again. Maybe I will.
Yeah,
will
give
like
it
this
another
time.
try.
I will give it a try. Yeah. So I think we've done. Has anyone showed 5 records or
Yeah.
Brian, Ben, David? Okay.
6, I think.
Anything to any random stuff we can come up with, or can we?
Oh, I dug these out the other day,
Yeah.
which you might like.
Oh yeah, nice.
Oh yeah.
And I've got quite strong opinions about this period of Simple Minds. Less so this period, because this is great, but they were in their truly bombastic phase here. But these are great. In isolation, the 12-inch singles are fantastic.
Yeah.
But a whole album, one after another, does my particular head in. But these are good. Oh yeah, I dug those out. Simple Minds, fantastic.
Have you heard the new?
I've just bought a quadruple 4 CD set, Live in the Angels or something. It's on a recent tour.
Yeah.
4 CDs in this like long book-like thing. £4.49 from Amazon.
Have you heard that yet though? I've watched some of the videos on YouTube. It's quite different. Like the arrangements are quite different from the.
Should be good.
Yeah,
good.
No, I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
They were always very inventive, weren't they, with their different mixes?
Mm.
You know, especially around those Sons and Fascination and Empires and Dance period. Great band. I thought they were rubbish live though, because they were chaotic, a bit not really tight enough on stage for my liking. But yeah, fine band back in the day.
Is that still the original lineup? I'm not really
No.
expert. Sorry.
No, Charlie Burchill, I think, and Jim Kerr. I think that's about it, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's worth a punt at £4.49. That's fantastic.
Yeah. You bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I only have the 12-inch, which is amazing.
That's a good one.
Say that again, Ben.
And what's that?
What'd you say? I didn't hear you.
I said I only have the 12-inch of Love Song.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing song. And
it is.
And the main reason I have it is because I saw there's a band I love called Black Cab, and they did a cover of it when I saw them, and I was like, I know that song, and I couldn't remember why. And sure enough, Simple Minds.
Yeah, great song.
But that's the extent of my knowledge.
And I think they had hard times at their beginnings. I remember an uncle, he saw them live in a small club in France, in the French Riviera, and playing in a small clubs. And 6 months after, they were doing the soundtrack of Breakfast, the Breakfast Club, and then everything was done. Yeah. So maybe we will be wrapping up. If anyone has
any other questions, I guess. Are we missing any questions?
I'm not sure.
See you, Mike.
I'm not sure. Last chance to put a question for today's panel, for today's great panel. Pretty amazing.
I like that comment from Darren Crawford there. You know what? I'm a keyboard player and I have yet to hear ELP's Love Beach.
Yeah, probably not the first record you buy when you.
We're all going to go off and play it this evening. Well, not you, Ben, because your evening's over.
Yeah. So,
I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
So yeah, we nearly hit the 3-hour mark, which is pretty decent. So I don't see any questions arriving on the chat. So maybe time to wrap up. Once again, thank you guys for watching. Available in replay. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thank you guys for being on the show. Pretty cool to have three gentlemen from all over the world, Canada, UK, and Australia represented. Stay tuned for the next chapter and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks for organizing it and getting in touch.